like to call the special meeting of June 4th to order. Please stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Allen? Here. Bratton?
Here.
Darnell?
Here.
DePalma? Here. Cordella is absent with notice. Marshall?
Yes.
Thurman?
Here. Now we need to approve the agenda for the special meeting. Someone like to make a motion to approve as presented?
Yes. Support.
Okay, we have a motion by trustee DePalma, and it is seconded by trustee Marshall. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The agenda has been approved as presented unanimously. Okay, so at this time, we have our first item of new business is closed session to consider township attorney's confidential opinion. So I need a motion to move to closed session.
Support.
I have a motion to move to closed session by trustee DePalma, and it is seconded by trustee Marshall. And we need to do a roll call because we need 2/3.
Bratton?
Yes.
Darnell?
Yes.
DePalma?
Yes.
Cordella is absent with notice. Marshall?
Yes.
Allen?
Yes.
Thurman?
Yes. Okay, motion is approved unanimously, so at this point we will go into closed session. We went into closed session, we have to open it back up and close this meeting. So, I will entertain a motion from someone to reconvene from closed session. Support. I have a motion by Clerk Allen, and it is seconded by Treasurer Darnell to reconvene from closed session. And we need to do a roll call, please.
Darnell?
Yes.
DePalma?
Yes.
Cordella is absent with notice. Marshall?
Yes.
Allen?
Yes.
Bratton?
Yes.
Thurman?
Yes. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, at this time, we need to approve the closed session minutes as were read in closed session. Who would like to make that motion?
Support.
I have a motion by Treasurer Darnell, and it is seconded by Trustee Marshall to approve the closed session minutes that were read in closed session. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is approved unanimously. There is no action at this time in regard to our closed session. So we can take citizens' comments on anything at this point in time. This is a special meeting, so if you want to speak now, you can. If you want to speak later, you can. Or you can speak both times. So is there anyone that wanted to speak right now?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I had great intentions. I got talking to the cops last week or last month, and I didn't get back in. Good evening. My name is Tim Crane. I live at 1440 Granger Road, Ortonville, Michigan. Got a prepared statement, and then I'll try to ad lib after that. So I'd like to talk to you about the road conditions on Granger Road from Hadley to East Glass, specifically Granger Hill. The loose gravel, washboards, and the clouds of dust. I've been in Brandon Township for 24 years this September, and this is our lifetime home. We've raised our daughters here. When we moved here, they were 3 and 6. He graduated from Brandon High School in 2006 and 2009 with honors, and at that time was a very good high school and school district. They both played sports, excelled in academics, and many other activities in the area. Both of them, for the most part, had great teachers, and I give them credit for them becoming the good and respectful and smart adults that they are today. It's been a great place to raise our kids. We support local businesses when possible. I'm a registered voter and I do vote. A little bit of trivia, based on a federal government document, August 2015 publication, FWWA OTS-15-0002. According to the U.S. Department of Treasury, Federal Highway Administration, there are 1.4 million miles of unpaved roads in the United States in 2012. Unpaved roads count for 35% of more than 4 million miles of road that make up our nation's transportation system. About 1.3 million miles of these unpaved roads are rural areas where local jurisdictions have ownership of about 1.2 million miles. There's article after article based on private and government studies proving facts of health concerns with road dust, from asthma, heart and lung disease to cancer. Road dust affects everyone that comes in contact with it. It adversely affects older individuals and younger kids more so. However, anyone that would have symptoms, that would be exposed to the dust would have symptoms. I've addressed the Granger Road concern with many Brandon Township boards and through the years and with different results. Many of the board members have come to my home and witnessed the poor road conditions, the washboard driving too fast road conditions, and the clouds of dust. You're all welcome to come to my home. All of the supervisors, since we've been here, have been to our house several times during their elected terms, including Kathy that's been out there 2 to 3 times. With all of the supervisors that came to our house and we saw the complaint, there was some form of satisfaction or rectification. During that period of time, it simply took a phone call when the road started to fall apart and there was some action done from the road commission. In the last few years, basically, the roads have deteriorated and are not in great shape. They chlorided Friday, and this, we're going to ad lib here for a second. They chlorided Friday, and they're already turning to gravel again. Saturday morning, I got up, and cars and trucks were coming up the hill, driving reasonably slow, in normal and safe conditions, and there's dust behind them. Saturday morning, my car was covered with dust. Sunday morning, my car is covered with dust. Shouldn't happen a day after they're chlorided. Also contributing to poor road conditions is the increased speed. Giving the gas, spinning the tires, the traction going up the hill create washboard and dust even sooner. Speeding down the hill causes clouds of dust for a half a mile or more. Visibility is the vehicle's hood. Acceleration around corners, breaking up the road creates potholes. Whether a speed limit is 55 or 45, the limit is safe for driving conditions and having your vehicle under control. So at 25 or 30, not having your vehicle under control or bouncing across the washboard is a violation and careless or reckless driving. Yet you can't find an Oakland County sheriff for miles to witness it, and even then it's subjected to those type of tickets that are not handed out. So I touched on talking about the clouds and the speed.
30 more seconds.
Okay. I live with this 365 days a year. So we'll have a little more time here. So the bottom line is, I'll skip all the rest of this. The bottom line is, this is the document from the Federal Department of Transportation, and it talks about the preparation of the roads. It talks about that there are 2 major differences in the road gravel, and I'll even paraphrase it even less than what I've got here. There's sand with gravel, and then there's the filler that has clay in it. what's being put on the roads is just the same, and there is no filler to bind it and hold it together. There's a process to grade it, there's a process to do it, to put chloride down. In Oakland County, and this is very specific, talking about that the chloride, the road needs to be not only graded right, but then it needs to be watered down before the chloride is placed on it. Oakland County Road Commission has never done that since I've been here. There's one tank. Goes up and down. The chloride will then just run off the road. So as you can go through here and you can look at that, maybe you can look at some of the reasons why that our roads keep breaking up. You're spending money for nothing because it clearly states on how to do it and the results of it, and the results of it are the continual poor roads. So if we continue to do the same thing, which is the definition of insanity, continue to do the same thing and expect different results, we're never going to get any improvement. There are also other people that should be here, and there's a couple of emails that we're supposed to read in regards to this too. So thank you for your time.
Was there anyone else that wanted to speak? This is a special, for those of you that just came in, we are finishing up a special meeting that we had prior to our board meeting, and we're taking public comment at the end of this meeting. We will also have public comment at the end of our regular meeting. But if there's anyone that wanted to speak now as opposed to later, you're more than welcome to speak now. All right, seeing none, we will adjourn our meeting. So who would like to make a motion to adjourn? Support. I have a motion by Trustee DePalma, and it is seconded by Treasurer Darnell to adjourn our special meeting. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Meeting's adjourned. We'll start our next one in about 10 minutes. Thank you everyone for coming to our meeting tonight. I would like to open the regular meeting of June 4th. Please stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
roll call, please.
Allen. Here. Broughton.
Here.
Darnell. DePalma. Here. Cordella is absent with notice. Marshall.
Here.
Thurman.
Here. Okay, at this time we need to approve our agenda. Are there any questions or concerns, changes to the agenda tonight?
I would like to request that, and I'm ever the cynic, so I sort of feel like my public comments motion is sort of buried here. We have enough people in the audience that I think they would much rather hear what we say about that than whether the MTA gets their dues from us or whether we sell skate park equipment we've had for 10 years. So I would like to request we move item I up to after the assessor's report.
Well, assessor's contract.
Yes.
You're saying we-
Yes. Every period or every meeting we have people
Okay.
making comments about public comments and how they go. We have the public here. They'd certainly be interested in what we're discussing, rather than having them fall asleep, go brain dead listening to MTA dues or going home.
I don't have a problem with that. The rec director and the fire chief might have to stay a little longer.
I'll second his motion.
Well, you don't have to make a motion.
I thought it was a
Well,
motion.
no, we're just gonna make this, and then we're gonna
Okay.
motion to approve
Okay,
as
all right.
amended.
All right.
So you would like to move item I in between B and C?
Yes.
Okay. Item I up to B and C. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. So any other concerns about the agenda tonight or discussion? So we will be moving item I between item B and C after the assessor's contract. And who would like to make a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I will.
And who would like to,
The timesheet doesn't add up though to what's on our agenda.
Did you get the new revised one? Was
I
handed out
did.
February?
So the revised one is 297, 198, 297, and 99. Or is
maybe the agenda's not.
That's what I'm saying, is the agenda not amended?
Probably
Or is this
not.
because,
Because it just showed up out here. So what's the total amount?
well, are you leaving Bob's with 529 on it, or are you taking that off?
We're leaving it.
Yeah, we already discussed that.
We discussed it, we have it all worked out, Dana.
Okay.
I didn't think it was important to bring to the whole board.
Well, when I went to add everything else I was trying to figure out why it didn't add.
Yeah, we had discussed it.
So,
It may be something I should know why
do
I'm
all,
approving
does
it.
this amount equal what's on the agenda?
No, there was a timesheet missing in your packet with this amount, and it was added
Oh,
afterwards.
so
We
this
got the
amount
timesheet.
should be correct.
Yes.
It should be correct.
792 should be correct.
Can we not do this in the office?
Yeah.
Or do you have to know exactly what it is? I'll have one.
Well, why,
And if I'm approving it, I need to know what I'm approving.
we can move the trustee's timesheet down to the last item on the agenda. We can take it out of the consent, and that way it'll give us time to do that, okay? So we'll make an amendment to the agenda to move from the consent agenda, item F, trustees' timesheets in the amount of $792, and we'll move that down to the end of new business, okay?
It's going to be $891. The agenda is incorrect. It should be $891 is the correct amount.
So, are we good with moving it down?
I'm good with
In case
moving
there's
it down,
more.
yes.
Where are you moving it to? I'm sorry.
The
After
very
J.
end, after J. New business.
Got it.
Okay. So with someone, okay, we have trustee Marshall. So we now have two amendments on our agenda. So are we good with that, trustee Marshall and trustee Bratton?
Yes.
Okay. So I have a motion by trustee Marshall and it is seconded by trustee Bratton to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. The agenda has been approved as amended unanimously. Okay, so to start our meeting, we have Chris Veenstra here.
Thank you.
You
Should
want
I-
to stand up? And-
Sure.
And he is going to present our overall actuarial. And we've got our new projector working, so.
Yeah, so I'll try not to stand in the way of it. Is this loud enough if I talk from here?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, board members, for having me and for asking us to do your actuarial work for you. When Mr. Marshall mentioned glazed over eyes and people leaving,
I wasn't referenced to you.
but hopefully not, but we'll see. I'll see if I can rise to the occasion. Trying to distill what's important to the report for a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. There are accounting issues, and I'll refer to them a little bit. I'm not going to really focus on the accounting so much. What I'm going to do is try to focus on what does a liability mean when we calculate a number that is supposed to represent the value of your retiree medical benefits, and we call it a liability. What does that really mean? And I guess the way to look at it, or a way to look at it, is that it's this theoretical amount that if you had this money set aside pre-funding, this is how much you would need to have. So, for instance, if I say, you know what, I'm going to save up for a $20,000 truck to buy it in 2 years, and I say I'm going to set aside then, you know, close to $1,000 a month to get me to that point in 2 years to buy that $20,000 truck, then when I'm a year in, halfway there, and somebody would say, what's your liability? I would say it's $10,000 because I'm a year into 2 years of savings. I should have $10,000 saved up. Now, if I look in my piggy bank and I don't have $10,000 saved up yet, so my liability, what I should have is $10,000, and let's say my assets, what I do have is $5,000, I would say I am 50% funded. Because you would say, well, wait a minute, your truck is $20,000, how is $5,000 50% funded? It's 50% of where I should be after 1 year. So so hopefully that kind of helps you paint the picture. So then, a couple of things that are really important when coming up with these liabilities is how much does that truck really cost? And the other thing is, how much do I think I will earn on my money if it's in the bank? So, for instance, my assumed rate of return, if I come up with how much I've got to set aside and I assume 3% return on my money, I'm going to have to set aside a certain amount of money. But if I think I'm going to get 7% return on my money, then I don't have to set aside as much because interest will do the rest, will do the difference. So my liability is going to reflect how much I can earn on my investments. And the higher I think I can earn, the more money I think I can earn on investments, the lower my liability is going to be, the less money I have to have on the bank because I think interest is going to make up the difference. And that's really going to show up here, the impact in this report, especially when I compare it to what you've seen before. So that's one thing, assumed rate of return on my investments. The second thing is the cost of that truck. So let's suppose that I'm a year in on a $20,000 truck, and I say, okay, my liability is $10,000. And then my buddy, who owns a car lot down the street, comes to me and says, you know what? I can get you that truck for $15,000 instead of $20,000. All of a sudden, my liability has dropped from $10,000 to $7,500 because I'm halfway to saving, and I'm not halfway to $20,000 anymore. I'm halfway to $15,000. So my liability where I have to be a year in is only $7,500. If I had $5,000 set aside in the bank, I went from 50% funded to 66% funded just because my buddy said, I can get you that truck for $15,000 instead of $20,000. So the assumed rate of return is going to have a big impact on my liability, and what the benefits cost is going to have a big impact on my liability. And you're going to really see that in this next illustration here. So I did this calculation way back in 2012 for the first time, and then was invited in 2017 to do the calculation again. So in 2012, I calculated a liability based on an assumed rate of return of 7%, and because those were the accounting rules at that time, and the assumed Medicare eligible costs, which were really quite expensive. And I came up with a liability of $4.7 million. And that's where your plan had to be funding-wise. You needed to have that much money in towards saving for that benefit. And that's what we called the liability at January 1 of 2012. And the closer we get to having to pay those benefits, the larger that liability becomes. Just like with that truck. 6 months in, I have to have $5,000. A year in, I have to have $10,000. A year and a half in, I have to have $15,000. So my liability grows the closer I get to buying that truck. until the truck is gonna be bought, my liability is $20,000. If I go to the dealer and say, hey, how much did that truck cost me? He says, well, it's $20,000. That's my liability. Now, I might not have that money, but that's what the liability is to buy that truck. So the liability, the closer you get to having people retire, the more that liability grows. So that in January 1 of 2017, we expected the liability to be $6.1 million. Well, then Kathy Thurman called me up and she says, hey, there's a new GASB statement, a new accounting standard. We need you to recalculate this. I'm going to give you updated census data. I'm going to give you updated costs. And we'd like you to calculate that liability again. Well, so I did it for 2017, and look at there. I expected the liability in 2017 to be $6 million, but it was only $5 million. What in the world happened? I still had the same expected return on money, it's still 7%, but it dropped to $5 million. How could that be? It's because my buddy down the street, or Kathy's buddy down the street, said, I can get you those same benefits for less. And so, especially the Medicare benefits, the costs that were reported dropped to less than what we expected them to be at that point. So the cost of the truck dropped, the liability where we had to be in our pre-funding dropped. So now we're down to $5 million, and again, with the passage of time, you get 1 year closer to retirement. That liability grew to $5.4 million. And the assets at 12/31/2017 were $1.8 million. So there was an unfunded liability. I had to be at $10,000 for my truck. I only had $5,000, so I was only 50% funded. Or in this case, I had to be at $5 million. I only had $2 million, so I'm just under 40% funded towards where I should be, and that was my unfunded liability. Well, there was a new accounting standard that said, you know what, even if you do have money set aside and you think you can get 7% on that money, the new accounting standard says we're going to change the rules up a little bit. And to the extent that this money is short of your liability and isn't able to pay all those benefits, you're going to have to use a AA 20-year municipal bond rate mixed in with that 7%. You know, this is where everybody starts to snooze, and so I'll gloss over that quickly. But the point being is that I had to recalculate that liability at a 3.5% discount rate instead of 7%. And hoofda, look at what an impact that had on the liability. Remember I said the assumed rate of return on investments? If I assume 7%, that means my liability is $5.4 million. If I only think I'm going to get 3.5 on that investment, now where I have to be money-wise is all the way up to $9 million because it's going to get that much less return on investment according to the GASB rules. Well, that compared to my $2 million, now I went from 40% funded to under 20% funded just because of the change in the assumed rate of return, dropped from 7 to 3.5. Well, so then I delivered this report to Kathy. I said, well, Kathy, I got some rough news for you. The liability went way up to $9 million, and I explained it to her. And then she said, well, can you tell me what the Medicare costs were that you used? And I said, well, I saw these Medicare costs of $11,000 a year, so that's what I was using for Medicare eligible retirees. And she said, well, we have some Medicare eligible retirees. Let me show you what their average annual costs were, and let's use that as a starting point. And those were only $3,000. So then, somebody told me the truck was going to cost a lot less. Instead of almost $12,000, it's going to be 25% of that, $3,000. So now you see dropping from expecting my Medicare costs to be $11,000 a year to $3,000 a year. Look at where I had to be savings-wise. It dropped considerably. Now, I didn't have to be at $9 million. I could be down as low as $3.5 million in liability, where I should be savings-wise. And now look at how much better my funded percentage became. Now I'm a little bit over 50%, just because the cost of those benefits was a lot lower than what we thought they were. And now, take into account the new GASB rules. It's kind of a chicken and egg type of proposition, because so much more of my benefit can be paid for existing assets, mixing in that 3.5% AA bond rate now became irrelevant, and furthermore, the people who have your investments published a paper that said, we think we can get 7.75% on your investments. So now if we use a 7.75% expected return on money, 7.75% discount rate, that liability drops even more. Now it's down to $2 million, which is almost covered by the assets. So where you should be at this point, assuming that the Medicare costs of $3,000 is now down to $2 million, which are almost covered by your assets, and you're almost to 100% of where you should be. Now that number is going to continue to grow, but so will your assets. Questions at this point before I go to the next? Yeah.
So as your employees age, retire, and start getting on to Medicare, that $3,000 is an increase. How is that going to impact?
We have built into our liability an assumed rate of Medicare inflation of 5% a year. And that is from, we get that 5% from some national publications on what the expectation is going to be for Medicare supplemental plans. So this is supplemental to what they can get through Medicare, through the government, and the supplemental costs come out to the $3,000 a year, and we assume 5% inflation on that.
So my question is the 7.75%, is it realistic? Because I don't know how we can use that, because MERS didn't even report that to us as pension. But they just changed on our pension and said we have to, our pension liability started going up and our percent funded started going down because of the.
From 8 to 7.75%. And
So
just
that's
to
how
make,
that one changed?
yeah,
Okay, I wasn't
just
sure how that
to make a
changed.
comment, I had that same conversation with Chris.
Well, yeah,
This
you
is
did,
like,
I haven't.
well, I know, just so you know. I thought 7.75% was really high, and Chris also thought it was too high as well. But he's taking that from MERS, who is where we keep our retiree health care funding vehicle with.
And they're the ones that just, okay,
And
maybe they dropped it.
They dropped it from 8% to 7.75.
Okay, I thought it was lower than that.
And then a couple weeks ago, I went to a MERS meeting, and the year after next, they're gonna recalculate, and they're thinking that it's gonna drop even more. So at that point, that 7.75% will adjust to what MERS comes up with for their rates.
Do you have recommendations for townships such as ours to not take the pie in the sky 775, but go with maybe somewhere in between the 3.5 and the 775? So we're not looking at a best case scenario, but you can't plan based on that.
Right.
So maybe we're down maybe more in the 5 range, which just seems more realistic to me.
I would say 6, 5 to 6.
Yeah,
What are your recommendations on that?
there's two answers to that. One is before this latest change to GASB, I would make a recommendation, and I would look at the historical return, and I would look at returns that we're seeing in other investments, and I would say, you know what, I do have a couple municipalities and other public employers that prior to the new GASB, we were using 5.5% and 6%, right in that range. And that's really a more comfortable spot for me. The challenge now under the new GASB is they prescribe very specifically how to calculate that expected rate of return. So I need to follow the GASB standard, and it then in turn relies upon the investment manager to provide that information to me. So like Kathy was saying, we had a conversation. I said, you know, I'm really uncomfortable with 775. But this is what MERS is saying as of December 31, and it is a snapshot, December 31, 2017. I fully expect MERS to come back 12/31/18 with a lower target, in which case we'll lower the expected rate of return and the liability will increase for that. I would expect another $250,000 if they were to drop that, say 25 basis points to 7.5. So we expect that to happen. So that's the dicey position I'm in, of feeling uncomfortable with it. And then turn around and I go to the audit team and I say, you know what, I don't think that 775 is very good. I think it should be 6. Then the question will be, and on what do you base that? You know, so if I've got MERS's sheet and I can say, well, here's MERS's sheet, you know, I feel your pain. I know what you're saying, and I do think that I think we're all in agreement that is probably aggressive, and they will, in all likelihood, at 12/31/18, come in with a lower expected rate of return, and as a result, we're going to come back with a higher liability in the interim period until the next calculation. So it is good that you're aware of that happening.
So you can't use historical anymore as your percentage?
Right. The way that the new GASB works is they say you ask from your investment manager what the target allocation is and the expected rate of return by allocation, and do a weighted average and add to it inflation. And so MERS publishes a sheet with just exactly that information. And if you'd like, I can email you a copy of that sheet. And as of December 31, 2017, it was 775. So, I mean, I don't know if the audit team would like to, not to put you guys on the spot, but if you say, look, if the board agrees that feels aggressive to us, and we can look at historical returns and hang our hats on that, but then that puts you in the tight spot too, of saying, okay, where did you get it from? And one of the luxuries, I guess, of the new GASB statement is the ability for me, for the audit team, to say, this is what the investment portfolio, the investment managers of the portfolio said we expect it to be, and we have something to hang our hat on.
Okay.
So I know it's not a great answer.
Right, and then I had the second part, our Medicare costs are only $3,000 a year?
That, the supplemental coverage, the experience in terms of reimbursements, were actually a little bit less than $3,000 per person. And so that's where we went on there. If
Okay, so that's
somebody wants to-
$3,000 per person, that's not, you're saying our whole year was only $3,000?
No, right, it's per
Okay.
person, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it's per
but
person.
that's gonna increase, obviously, the more we have who retire, so do you take that into account too while you're doing the calculation? Like right
Yes.
now, I don't know how many we have retired, but in the future, if we have more, you're taking that by looking at,
Yes, everybody, and I'll jump to the report here. This is where we get a little bit muddied down, but in the report, there's that presentation of the calculation of the expected rate of return, and that is just taken off of MERS sheet. And then under the assumptions, and I'm blowing through all the good stuff here, but under the assumptions, this is the per person costs that we use for a 50-year-old retiree, $7,400 per year. For a 55-year-old retiree, older people tend to experience higher costs, $9,300. For a 60-year-old, $11,000. And then once they hit 65 and the plan becomes secondary payer to Medicare, its per person drops down to $3,000. So the point being that as we project people to retire, when we expect somebody to retire, say, and he's 60 years old, he or she, we would expect the cost to be $11,308 if they're in the PPO plan, or $8,200 if they're in the HMO plan. If we have somebody who we project to retire and they are a 65-year-old, it's going to be $3,000 for that person for the year with inflation. So if it's if it's next year, it's going to be 5% higher. The year after that, it's going to be 5% higher again. So all of these costs have inflation built in there.
and all of those costs are included. It's just when you say 3,000 on that line here, it makes me think you've only used 3,000, but you've used all of those numbers
Yes,
built
yes.
into who's retiring when, sort of a thing, and done an analysis to it.
Yes, and
To figure out
thank
our
you.
liability.
Yeah, thank you, Dana, for pointing that out. In that summary sheet and in that illustration I showed before, the only reason I showed the Medicare is because of the pronounced difference in the liability that just changing that piece had. Because even though these are pretty steep costs, it's temporary. 10 years or 15 years, then they hit 65, and then it's lifetime. So the Medicare costs have a much bigger impact.
Chris, did you use any of those PPO numbers? Because right now, everyone is in the HMO, or if they want the PPO, they have to pay the difference out of pocket.
Yes, thank you. That is what we did. We valued, thanks for clarifying that, we valued the HMO plan for the participants, or if, and I think historically you had a few people in the PPO, and now they may have been just registered as a HMO, but yes, we did that, thanks.
Okay, thank you. That's where I was just concerned of, I just used 3,000, but that was just.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's also an opt-out option that some have taken, and we just valued $2,000 a year for life for those people. So I didn't really hit on the accounting, and Kathy, if you'd like me to walk you through, I'm happy to do that, but I wanted to get that big concept across, and the questions really make me believe you got that picture and the significance of that.
I think the other thing that we're interested in is the breakdown between the fire department and the township.
Okay. Yep. Maybe before I do that, I'm gonna quick point this out. Under this new accounting, then, as I indicated, the closer people get to retirement, the bigger the liability becomes. So we started out at 1.9 million at the beginning of the year, and it grew to 2 million at the end of the year. And the way that happens is, again, like that truck illustration, each year you have to be another $1,000 closer to paying for your truck, if you will. The liability grows because of that, one step closer each year by $20,000. Also, that liability grows with one less year of discounting. If your money's expected to grow by 7.75% a year, then your liability is going to grow by 7.75% a year. So there's $148,000 in interest cost, and then it's reduced by the benefits that we expect to be paid during the year. And so at the end of the year, we're expected to be at $2 million. So why did I just bother to show you all that? Okay, from an accounting standpoint now, the township has to expense that. If our liability is 1.9 million at the end and at the beginning, and at the end it's 2 million, how do you get there on the balance sheet? We've got a balance sheet item of an unfunded liability of $518,000 at the beginning, and we have a balance sheet item of $260,000 at the end. How do we get from the beginning to the end of the year? And so that's called expensing. So you have to expense that difference. Of these components, and this is where I'm really afraid to wade into the waters and cause people to rush out in a panic. But in the expensing, you expense all of the service costs and you expense all of the interest costs. And if there are gains or losses, you're gonna recognize those over future periods. You're gonna defer some of it. And so, we have an expense for the year of the service cost and the interest cost reduced by our expected earnings on assets, and a little bit, we had investment gains, and we're not recognizing all of the investment gains, but we're going to recognize a portion of them, and we're going to defer the rest. That's under the accounting rules. But Dana, here is something somewhat interesting, is that we expected a $124,000 return on our investment. And the fact that we are showing a gain here shows they actually did do better than 775. But 2017 was a kind of a crazy year that way. But it is something to, further hang one's hat on before stoning MERS too badly. So the only reason I walked you through that expense here, by the way, is the deferred investment gains. We're not recognizing all the gain, so we have what's called a deferred inflow of resources, which means in the next 4 years, we're going to pick up another $17,000 in investment gain because we didn't recognize it all in the year in which it occurred. So we have some credits to our expense in the next, each of the next 4 years because of that. And the only reason I showed you that is because Kathy asked for a breakdown, and I got a breakdown of the expense and the liability, so I wanted to tell you what expense was. But here's the expenses for the year. That $31,000 expense is broken down between fire and others. $19,200 for the fire, and the others $12,476. That's the breakdown of that expense. Now, expensing and contributing are two different things. So we also calculated a contribution requirement, and we've got those recommendations broken down right here. So the 2018 recommended contribution is $42,000 for the fire, $28,000 for others, for a total of $70,000 for the group. The liability breaks down this way. Here's the liability for the fire. The assets, fiduciary net position, that's a way of making us feel smart by using words like that, but it's just under the GASB requirement. So $1.2 million, we allocated $1 million of that to the fire for a net liability of $155,000. For the others, $820,000, $714,000 of assets, and $105,000 of liability. So your total unfunded liability between those two groups is allocated like that.
Chris?
Yeah.
For your expense and recommended contribution, is that considering that you're paying for the retired health care out of your funded vehicle?
Yes, what you can do, there's a couple ways you can handle this. I'm telling you, your recommended contribution is $70,000. If you're going to pay $70,000 in benefits directly to your retirees, you can satisfy the contribution that way. Instead of taking the $70,000 out of your general operating funds, putting it into the trust, and then turning around and paying those retirees from that trust, you can just skip that middle step and pay for it directly out of your general operating funds, as long as you do $70,000.
But then that's not helping decrease our liability by doing it that way, right? Because then we're not paying, that's the pay-as-you-go standard. If we want to try to decrease our liability, shouldn't we pay the 70 plus pay the current year?
That's a good way to go. This is a minimum requirement, if you will. But what you're suggesting would certainly be a prudent approach to say, well, let's do both. Let's put in the $70,000, so that'll bulk up our assets against our liability, but then we're also going to pay out whatever our expected retiree payments will be.
Do you guys still calculate an ARC, the annual required contribution? Is that basically what this is? It's just not called an ARC anymore?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did they take away the ARC terminology within a GASB?
Yes. Yeah.
I thought so.
They're just trying to confuse us, right?
Yeah. We call it guaranteed employment. Confusion is another word.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
This is our board, I mean,
She's
pay us on our
retirement
retirement
oversight. I think
oversight
she should be
committee.
able to,
Okay.
yes.
Quick question.
Would you like to stand up, please?
Certainly. My name's Kate Carl. I work at the fire department, and I'm also on the retirement oversight committee. We have some people that are opting out. do you
Yes.
include their liability?
We have an opt-out assumption that so for an existing retiree that opts out, the only thing we include is any stipend that they are being paid. So if they are being paid a stipend in lieu of opting out, that's included in the liability. If they have opted out and the board is not paying anything, it's not included. And then we make an assumption about the current actives as well then. So if 10% of your retirees opt out, we typically will apply a comparable type of percent to the actives. Does that make sense?
So if they decide to utilize the insurance later, then it will be incorporated into the liability?
Yes. Now here's the challenge. Most municipalities have provision that once you opt out, you can't come back in. If you have the provision that you can opt out as an active, but you are eligible once you retire, if everybody tends to come back in when they retire, we try to reflect that in the assumption.
Can we get a copy of this presentation?
Yeah, the report, yeah, okay.
You know, I need to have that conversation with you. The last time your firm did it, they provided like bound.
Oh, bound copies, okay.
So I didn't know if we were gonna get those or if I needed to run copies, but we'll get that figured out.
Well, we received an email last week, but it's not this, is what I'm saying. That PDF is different than this.
Shouldn't have done.
I saw this all, it looked the same to me, but I don't have.
Yeah, but you know, the first part, the hard copy thing that I gave you, Scott, was just something I threw together for the presentation tonight. But as far as this formal report goes, that email version, that electronic version should have been dispensed. With respect to bound copies, since we haven't been hanging out since 2012, we stopped doing bound as a matter of
Yeah,
default.
I wasn't asking for a bound copy, I just want an electronic copy. I don't have it, so.
But Kathy, I can.
We'll get the word copies.
I don't need a bound copy either, I can print it.
Okay, just let me know.
Yeah, I can print it if I need to, but I don't.
Okay, so there's a lot of stuff in here, but again, I really wanted to hit on the big picture and the concepts as best as possible.
So you're saying we're 87% funded then by the new GASB dropping our Medicare and using 7.75%, you're saying we're 87% funded?
Yes, and also, I'll comment two things on that. One is, as long as you appreciate that if MERS comes back next year with a lower discount rate, that percentage will change. And if you know Medicare costs blow up something more than the 3,000, that could impact it as well. The second thing that I would highlight is, well, that train left the station. Yeah, you're asking. Oh, yeah. There's pension, Public Act 202, which says that you have to be at least 40% funded or answer to the state. So I wanted to highlight the fact that in that respect, you're in good shape, and
That was
it's
my
good
major
that.
concern, because before we were 34, so that's a
Yes.
huge change, that's why it's shocking kind of.
Yes.
To go from 34 to 87.
Yes, makes me a little nervous too.
Not that I don't want to be like
Yeah.
87%, but it's a little shocking.
Yeah, it feels like I'm doctoring the numbers, but as long as I can point to the specific cause of the change.
I'm not saying you are, that's why I've had a lot of questions.
Yeah.
The other problem with making this shift based on GASB is GASB can make another shift yet next year, and suddenly we're 50% underfunded again.
Yes, now,
I don't see these shifts in the work
I'm
right
just
now.
telling you this, it happened that quickly the other way.
yeah, or even another more specific example is that right now the state of Michigan is accepting the GASB results as the funded status measurement. But what they want to do is publish their own set of assumptions so that everybody's using the same. And that could have an impact. But I'm hoping that gap between the 40 and 80 is big enough that even with those new assumptions, you'll still be above the 40%. And if not, we can certainly talk about plan changes that can be made to get it there and other things. But it really helps that you're close to $2 million in assets too, that you're well on your way. And I've got some who weren't funding at all, so,
We worked hard to get it back up.
well done.
Any other questions for Chris? Chris, did you have opportunity to meet Charlie from our auditing firm? He's one of your biggest fans.
Outstanding, good. Hope we didn't ruin that tonight. Yeah, they introduced themselves, so thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'll get copies one way or another from the board. I sent it to the Retirement Oversight Committee. I sent the original one that showed we were way underfunded. And then I sent the next one showing that we were 87% funded. And then I still had conversations with Chris thinking, well, maybe there's potentially another one coming down the pike, but I just wanted to make sure that I send the board the correct version. So we'll get that to you. All right. So we can move on with our meeting. We will do our reports. We have our normal treasury report and our general ledger report, our designated report, our reconciliation report, along with our building department report, and a recreation report. We have our recreation director here, so would you like to make any comments on your report?
Yes, I have. Yes, I would like to. I'm here, so I'm going to take the opportunity to speak. Just a couple of additions to your report. Opening night for baseball tonight. We got pitching machine and boys pitch, Little League. We also have 29 sponsors for the teams. We also have individual banner sponsors. Soccer, we ended up with 20+ sponsors, and also some individual sponsors as well for banners. Things that came across my desk today, literally today. Now, I would like to take it up with the park subcommittee members next month or when I next schedule. But Don's Little John's, and I talked briefly to the supervisor, and Candy made a request for the clerk's office to look into it. But back in 2008, when we ordered a accessible porta john to stay at the park year round, Don's Little John made a big mistake with their accounting. They have two different types of accounting. They have their seasonal where they come, get them the porta john, take it back, we get our bill, we pay it. Then they have a different firm, I think it's called Saginaw or somewhere, where they have billing that comes from this different firm for something that stays stationary, like our accessible. They sent us a letter stating that they haven't billed us since 2008, and they would like us to pay $14,580. Now, he even says it's an oversight on their part. I asked them, when she called me, I said, you need to drop the letter, I gotta take this to the board, because there's no funds in my budget. And this was a township budget item, so I will take it up with the park subcommittee and then go on further, because I can't really answer any questions what we're gonna do about that until I get with the committee.
Fred, we need to talk to the township attorney about that too.
Oh, that's first I heard. So anyway, it's okay, I guess it goes to the attorney.
For recommendation.
So that was a big surprise. And it's right up to date. Currently, we've always paid our bills, so I was surprised when I saw that. I did see it on our bills where it said universal accessible, but I guess that was for the cleaning and moving it around the park. Some really good news. We had the Memorial Day baseball tournament over the holiday, and we had 9-year-olds and 8-year-olds playing down at the park. 33 teams, and I received a letter from the Gladiators, the organizers of this, and said that they were very happy with my employees. They were very happy with the village park. They were just happy, happy, happy. And they know that the parking's an issue and that we are looking into some other means of controlling that parking. And they also said that they want us to pencil it in for next year and in the years after. They said they're already full for next year. I said, well, I got to get village approval to use the park. Once again, it shouldn't be a problem. It's one of our biggest fundraisers that we have, and that money is either used for park development, and I'm looking to make an adjustment tonight on something else. They also said they are aware that we're building a new park, baseball complex. Once that's developed, they want to increase the age group for that same tournament. So, once again, that'd be helpful. Let's see what else there. June 7th, I just got the email today, we are going to be visited by the DNR at the Township Park for the 2018 grant application. I was hoping that there had been bulldozers and all kinds of sort of things moving earth out there, but that's not happening. We're still waiting, or HRC finally sent in a new document that has been revised to the DNR, and we cannot yet send it out for bids. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to get that, and I expect that within a couple of weeks. And last, I just wanted to, I missed out on the audit report, and 18 years that I've been overseeing our budget, I've been, 2 years I was over budget, and this is one of them. But I just wanted to remind the board that some of the things that caused that was we took over the mowing last year, and we didn't make any adjustments to the fuel, and we spent $1,500 additional on fuel. Now, FICA went up and our education went up a little bit. My department last year spent $38,400 on running that office out of program money. If you think that's easy to do, it's not. And plus, try to run quality programs for the kids, update equipment, stuff like that. Now, this year, thankfully, the township has stepped up and took care of one of our employees. Any questions? Huh? Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Okay, we also have an Edna Burton Senior Center report, and now we can do trustees' reports. We'll start with Scott.
Yeah, I'll go quick. I attended the Skywarn training earlier this month. Yeah, it was interesting. It was at the Old Town Hall. Quite a few people showed up for it. Also had a Parks and Rec meeting. We've got a couple of other items in our agenda that we're going to discuss on that, so I don't want to be going any further at this point on Parks and Rec. I'm all set.
Thank you. Thank you.
Retirement Oversight Committee, obviously, you guys just saw the report, so we just need to hopefully meet this month, Kathy, to have that report for the state filled out. So we're going to plan a meeting, I'm hoping.
The clerk's office will be sending the information.
Great, but we had discussed at our last time of having a meeting, so.
Yep.
Right. Okay, so I haven't had a meeting, but we got the report, and we'll have a meeting this month, so. Thank you.
Yep. I've been in ongoing contact with the residents of Sleepy Hollow neighborhood. They provided me with some information. I want to share that. I thank all the residents for being here from that area, and I encourage you to provide additional information as it comes in. My feeling is that because the certain situation has been temporarily addressed, we've remained quiet on it. And this to me seems to be one of those issues that we need to, I personally would like to get a weekly report of where we're at, trying to push a legislative issue, where we're at as far as arranging meetings with the residents, legislators, the senator, the reps, whatever we're taking. I'd like to get an ongoing weekly update. But I just wanted to share some of the things that's been going on in that neighborhood. This is only since June 30th. On May 15th, Oakland County Sheriff's Department was responded to the home on Sleepy Hollow on a 911 call from the residents. No one appeared to be on the line. The deputies arrived, the employee at the facility refused to allow the officers to enter. Officers, because they are responding to 911, they walk by the person as their right is to do, and they encountered an individual, one of the residents there, who appeared to have some special needs. He advised the deputies he had inadvertently called 911, which sort of begs the question to me exactly who is watching the residents of that home. May 18th, a sign on private property several feet off the roadway, located just off of Granger on Sleepy Hollow, was run over by a motor vehicle, leaving tire tracks across the line. That was also reported to Oakland County Sheriff's Department. May 26th, the same owner, as previously mentioned in the May 18th incident, had moved her sign further off the roadway. This time the sign was stolen. The incident again was reported to Oakland County Sheriff's Department. May 27th, at 8:30 in the morning, actually 8:29, resident on Sashabaw observed a worker of the group home steal a sign from the front yard of their home. The theft was video recorded, and the information turned over to the Oakland County Sheriff's Department. The worker was issued a misdemeanor violation for larceny. There have been repeated reports of workers from the group home driving recklessly as they are either leaving or arriving at the residence during the time periods which would be consistent with their shift change. I had a conversation with Lieutenant Glover, and I asked him specifically. I wanted a comparison between, at that area, that address, number of calls in the past 3 months. And he said in the past 3 months, they've had 7 calls there altogether. For all of 2017, he advised me they had 1 call of that address. It would appear the owner and employees of this group home are engaging in a continuing and systematic attempt to disrupt and harass what has historically been a quiet family neighborhood, and in doing so are maintaining a disorderly home and create a public nuisance. I think we need to remain on this, and like I said, I would like to get weekly updates as to where we are as far as Rep. Riley, the senator. I know we were going to talk to representatives from the Department of Corrections. I'd like to keep up on this and see exactly where we are as far as these things go. And I think all the residents would as well.
That call in 17 may have been from when the new owner owned it as well.
On the 17th.
In this, in 20.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm sure my club might.
No, I believe that call back in 2017 was a medical for a child that was in that home on the previous occasion.
All right, thank you. But it's obvious that the owner and the workers are harassing this community. People have a right to have signs on their property, whether they agree with them or not. And these people are obviously harassing. It's a systematic harassment of this community. Yep.
All right, thank you. And treasurer's report.
On a completely different note, happy summer. We're really busy in the treasurer's office right now trying to get all the nuances of the tax bills ready for the print mode. The tax statement should be delivered to your house by July 1st. We can start taking payments thereafter. Partial payments are accepted. Please remember that. Dog licenses are now delinquent and are $33. Regardless if your dog is spayed or neutered, you're a senior, doesn't matter. They come out in December, and by June 1st, they go to delinquent status. And again, if you have any questions, just call our office. Thank you.
Glad to see everybody here tonight. Hope you got to enjoy the Memorial Day Parade. I'd like to thank all the veterans and salute to them, and all the volunteers that helped the Avenue flags go on. 660 full-size flags were flown last weekend. And permanent AV applications were mailed out to everybody on the list. It was over 1,000. So if you haven't received it, give our office a call. Ballots should be here in about 1 month because voting day is August 7th. And that's it.
Okay, as far as the supervisor's report, actuarial came in last week, and I sent that out to the township board, and we are 80% funded on that one, which is up from 79% last year, and it has to do with the extra amount of money that we are sending in because we are stating that it's in a separate account. That is helpful. So I do have an update for the group home situation and out on Sleepy Hollow in particular. But I know that there was a question on what we can do as far as our local zoning ordinances. And the state law preempts our local zoning. So the state law says that they can put group homes in residential neighborhoods. So the township cannot make a zoning regulation that says that they can't because the state law preempts that. Let's see. I spoke to the township attorney today, in fact, because I had been thinking that I would like to file another complaint with Laura. So I will be doing that, and part of what I'm going to do is include the theft report that I received from the sheriff's office or our substation. And I'm also in the process of setting up a meeting with Laura, the licensing Department of Regulatory Affairs, and the Department of Corrections in Lansing. And part of that meeting will be to discuss a meeting here for the public. I found out that the Performing Arts Center at the high school is available the last 2 weeks in June. So I'm going to push to have the public meeting at that time. So it looks like I'll probably be going to Lansing next week to meet with them and have that discussion so that we can get someone out here to do presentations for us. We had our parking lot replaced last week on the sides and the back, and they will be out to finish the front parking spaces. They said Thursday or Friday, and after they do that, then we can have the striping done. So that's coming along. We had we did a presentation on Saturday morning. That was Emily Dupin that came out, and she spoke on controlling Oriental bittersweet. And it was a very good presentation. It was informative, and we had 18 people in attendance, so that was good. The Road Commission for Oakland County started the second round of grading and chloriding last week, and they will be finishing up this week. And I want to plan a special meeting with the board, hopefully this month sometime, to review our strategic plan and also to go over our police budget with in mind figuring out how much we want to levy for a millage for December. And I've been getting complaints from some board members on meeting protocol. So I just want to remind the board to please not interrupt other board members. Please don't repeat questions or statements. Please speak without being recognized by the, please don't speak without being recognized by the chair. And also, wait to speak a second time until everyone has had a chance to speak their first time. And I also want to thank everyone for the beautiful Memorial Day parade and ceremony that took place on Monday. So it was a great ceremony, and we had to fly over just in the nick of time, so it was really nice. So that concludes the supervisor's report. And we can move on to correspondence. Tonight we have Zoning Board of Appeals meeting minutes of April 25th, 2018. The Parks and Rec Subcommittee meeting minutes of May 23rd, 2018. So at this time, we will take citizens' comments on agenda items. So if you see something on the agenda that you want to make a comment on, now is your opportunity. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes per person. Is there anyone that would like to make a comment on agenda items, on any of the agenda items? So not seeing any, we'll continue on our meeting. For our consent agenda tonight, we have regular meeting minutes of May 7th, 2018, special meeting minutes of April 30th, 2018, regular bills in the amount of $56,566.06, prepays in the amount of $98,683.07, and township benefits from payroll account of $29,777. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended? Because we omitted the one item.
I'll agree. I'll make a motion.
Okay. Who would like to support? All right, I have a motion by Clerk Allen, and it is seconded by Trustee Marshall to approve the consent agenda as amended. All right, is there any discussion before we vote? Everyone's quiet, so let's go ahead and do a roll call, please.
Allen?
Yes.
Broughton?
Yes.
Journal? Yes. DePalma?
Yes.
Cordella is absent with notice. Marshall?
Yes.
Yes, motion carries unanimously. So we can move right on to our new business, and our first item of new business is our 2017 audit report. And we have Ken Pelka here and Charlie. Charlie, what's your first name?
Kingstock? Kingstock?
Kingstock.
Most exciting part of the meeting, right?
Yes.
This doesn't get any better.
Where's the Bible?
Well, as always, guys, we want to just communicate our appreciation to continue to serve as your auditors here at Brandon Township. Overall, the audit went very smooth, and we have some pretty good news to give to the board and to your residents here tonight as far as your financial position for the township. I'd like to start on looking at your financial statements themselves. If you flip over to page 66, I'll just highlight some of the major parts of your funds. And the first fund that we are going to look at is your general fund. This is your general operating fund. As you can see, everybody finds where we're at. Page 66. So this is what we call your statement of revenues and expenditures and changes in the fund balance for the general fund. And as you can see, looking down the middle column there, your total revenues for the year were just over 2.2 million. Your operating expenditures were just under 1.7 million. So overall, you had a surplus of 575,807 in your general fund. And as you know, you transfer monies into the fund and you transfer monies out of the fund. Typically, it's between your general operating and your general designated fund. After those transfers were made, your actual surplus in the general fund was just over $299,000. Okay, so it was a nice increase. You started the year with just under $980,000 in your fund balance, so you finished the year with $1,278,755 in your general operating fund. Now it gets better. We're going to flip over a few pages to page 75, and this is a recap of your actual designated fund. Okay, kind of like what we call your savings set aside out of your operations. As you can see in this fund, you had investment income of just over $16,000. Transfers in came in at $294,326. You transferred back out of here $93,075. So your total change in your fund balance was $217,583 surplus. You started the year with $1,231,955.
and you finished the year with $1,449,538. So that was your actual fund balance in this fund. If you look over to the left there, page 74, you'll see the designations for your designated general fund account. And as you know probably better than me, you go through a lot of discussion as far as how much to put in each one of these designations. Your general carry forward, I'll point out, is just over $731,000 now. Okay? I think it'd be a good time to just take a look at your, what I call your coloring book, at your graphs here. A good way to show a little bit of a different perspective as far as your general fund goes, your revenues and expenditures and fund balance. So the first graph that we're looking at on page 1 is a pie chart of all of your revenues that come into your general fund. As you can see, your state shared revenues are basically the biggest chunk. Then you see the taxes and your licenses and permits and investment income and so on. Next graph is a picture of your bar graph of your expenditures, what goes out of the general fund, which we just touched base on. It's just under 1.7 million. The third graph is just a picture, a bar graph of what you call your other functions, kind of your things that aren't allocated specifically. And the big one in there is your longevity, cleanup, maintenance and repair, contracted payroll services, and so on. Now the best graphs are the ones coming up here on page 4 and 5. On your general operating fund, you can see your fund balance comparison over the past several years. As you can see, from 14 on up, you've had some nice increases, nice steady increases, I would also add. It's not like a roller coaster. So you've gone just over 1.2 million this year. So as far as the length of time we've been your auditors, that's the highest fund balance that we've seen out here. Then the next graph is a comparison of your fund balance with the general operating fund and your designated general fund. So when you put both of those together, you're just over $2.5 million in both funds. So, you should give yourself a pat on the back. You did very well. The next graph is a comparison of your revenues and expenses. And a good point here again is your blue graph, your blue bar, compared to your green one. Your revenues have been above expenses now for several years, creating those surpluses to increase your fund balance. The last graph are your township expenditures, and this is everything, including your fire department, public works, parks and operation, which is just over $6.4 million. So this would be the graph you would give to a resident that asks you, well, what does the township actually do for us? This is where your resources are paid out. I'd also like to just go over the fire department. If you could flip back in your...
On this chart, if I can just ask a question.
Sure.
How do you differentiate between police, fire, and public safety?
I'm sorry, Bob, what was the question?
You have, yes, the last page 7.
Yeah.
You have police operations, you have fire operations, and you have public safety.
Okay.
Where's public safety? To my way of thinking, police and fire is public safety.
Yeah.
You have a separate category.
Is that our square here?
I have to double check, but I believe the public safety is coming from your general fund, which is likely
Could that be our ambulance fund?
No, the ambulance with your fire.
Oh, fire.
Could it be the payment for the school liaison?
Yeah, it's probably one of these separate
I
categories.
think it's the building inspection.
I'm sorry.
I believe it's building inspection.
Building inspections?
I was curious.
Good question.
Yeah. If you look at back at page 66, it looks like it's the building inspection, the 137,712, and ordinance enforcement, 15.
All right, thank you.
Okay, now if we could flip back a little bit to our fire department. Which is on page 61. And this is a recap. As you know, the fire department has 4 separate funds. internally that you keep here at the township. Your operating, your equipment and housing, ambulance, and what we call public contributions. So on page 61 there, you can see the surplus in each fund. Except public contributions, they had a small negative of $40. But when you add everything together and you combine it all together, you had a surplus in the fire department of just over $287,000. So I need to give the chief a K a hand bill. So overall, the township is in good financial condition. If you have any questions or anything on that, we have to go over that right now, comments.
Most of us got our questions answered last week when you came out, so that was nice of you to do that.
Anything else?
Any questions?
And if anything does come to mind, I brought Charlie along with me because he's the specialist in what the gentleman prior to us was talking about. He was more or less going over OPEB, but pension's also another area. So Charlie was just going to talk a few points on that.
Okay, so I've been dealing with the pension and the OPEB for a couple of years now. One thing I just want to draw attention to is page 38 has the same summary of kind of what Chris had shown with the OPEB, but for your pension. We were at a liability at the beginning of 12/31/16 of about $1.7 million. Overall, that was funded about 75%. The state had come out with an article and kind of a benchmark just in the last year and a half, saying really 80% is a safe funding level to know that you'll be able to meet all of your obligations as they come due. You guys did a lot of work this year. A big part of that also comes from a rebound in the investment income. We got up to dropped the liability of about $1.4 million, which is about 79.9% funded. And this is using roll forward figures from your actuarial as of December 31st, 16, roll forward to 12/31/17.
So can we round that up and consider ourselves 80%?
So you're basically right at that safe benchmark of being 80% funded as of using that, and it sounds like it increased again with this 12/31/17 actuarial. It just came out, so that's not reflected in this report yet. So you're really making great strides getting that to where it needs to be, keeping it in a safe zone. One thing I want to point out, we had net investment income of $678,000 last year. That's about 13.5% on a market rate of return, just to give you a perspective of how last year was compared to that 7.75. Obviously, that's not normal for every year, but I wanted to draw attention that it was nearly double of what we're looking for. So the year before that was much worse. So it's going to fluctuate. From the OPEB perspective, we didn't get this OPEB report reflected in this financial statement as they were both released the same day. But the liability for your OPEB in your financial statement is about $1.57 million. As of the financial statement date, as Chris mentioned, that's going to drop to about $260,000 come next year.
Did anyone have any questions?
Does it matter for our state report for OPEB, as long as we go off of our OPEB report from them, it doesn't matter that our financials show the previous? Like if the state comes and asks for our financials, it does not show, would they ask for just our actuarial, or could they ask for our financials too?
They would probably want to base it more off the financial statement, I had to guess. You're kind of in a weird situation of the timing that they came out. So yeah, it might refer more to what's on the financial statement.
But we can use the actuarial those who file our public reports, correct?
I know the state's been very good about communicating with the municipalities, especially the ones that weren't funded properly. And they're really trying to help the local municipalities get caught up. So it's not something where they're trying to hurt you, but they do want to know who's underfunded. And so if it came down to that, I'm sure you could show them what the actuarial report showed, and they would totally understand.
Right, and then your financials are showing what the dates are, so it's not.
Right.
Okay.
You guys are an easy group tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? Thank you very much. Thanks
Yeah,
for
thank
coming
you.
tonight.
Safe drive.
Thanks.
All right, so now that we received our audit report, would someone like to make a motion to accept the 2017 audit report as presented? Is there any discussion? I have a motion by Clerk Allen, and it is seconded by Treasurer Darnell to accept the 2017 audit report as presented. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. So now we can move on to item B, assessor's contract. So our assessor is here. Hopefully everyone had a chance to read over the information. Bills, if you want to step up to the podium, Bill. He's really worked hard for the township, I can attest to that. He is just doing a bang-up job.
Thank you.
He's making sure everything's getting on the roll, and that's gonna be a long process. And anyway, so we hired Bill over a year ago, and he is asking for a little bit more money going into next year, only a couple thousand more on the contract amount, and keeping the employment agreement the same as last year. And he would like to enter into a 3-year agreement with us, which is comparable to what we've done in the past with our previous assessor. So are there any questions from the board to Bill?
I have one. When you first came before us, you were talking about the items that were not registered and were not kept track of, and you had to go back through all the records, and how's that going?
That's going good.
Yeah.
It's a big process, but I'm starting to see, I'm starting to reach a point in the township where I guess I'm seeing less and less omitted property, which is a good sign, but it could just be in waves.
Can we expect the same amount of time here for Brandon Township in the upcoming 3 years that we got from you in this last year?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's here most weekends.
I'm here most weekends and most nights, so.
Fair enough.
Did anyone have any questions regarding the employment contract and the, what do you call them, the contract for supplemental assessing services? Would someone like to make a motion to approve the assessing contract and employment agreement with Bill Thompson as presented?
Second.
Is there any discussion on any of them? Okay, I have a motion by trustee Marshall and a seconded by trustee Broughton to approve the assessing contract and employment agreement with Bill Thompson as presented. And seeing no discussion, roll call please.
Darnell?
Yes.
DePalma?
Yes.
Cordella is absent with notice. Marshall?
Yes.
Allen?
Yes.
Broughton?
Yes.
Thurman?
Yes. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was quick. Okay, so next we are going to do item I, which is trustee Marshall's public comments.
All right, so this is a motion that really to clean up. I have a real concern about, in most recent months, we've had some fairly contentious issues where the public has voiced concern. And as it currently stands, there are no guidelines for identifying who those individuals voicing their opinions are. to that end, we've had people from outside the community coming into our meetings and voicing their concerns. We have, for the trails, we have people coming out from outside the community trying to get us to take action that would suit them, not necessarily our community. Most recently, we had people approaching us about the group home situation. One of them, we found out afterwards, actually worked for the group home. And the other one, still not sure, but I'm fairly certain she did not live in the township as well. I would recommend that the board take action to require those speaking in public comments. And just so you know, I gave out an extra pamphlet here, or not pamphlet, but or I amended my original motion. So I would recommend that the board take action to, I'll just read the motion, shall be required to ask of citizens making comments during the citizen comments section of the public meetings and or any other occasion where citizens address the township board, that to provide their name and village, city, or township of residence. Now, behind that, I have other information here.
Just let me interrupt.
Are you
I'll
making
second
that
your
motion?
I am, yes, I am making.
I'll second that.
So in doing some background on this, I took a survey of Oakland County townships, and I realized that I actually missed the township, but it was an easy weakness. I called the townships, and all I needed to talk to a clerk or the deputy clerk, and the question I posed to them was, if a citizen wishes to address the township board during citizens' comments, do they have a requirement they provide information before they address the board, such as name, township, residency, etc.? Brandon Township is name only. Oakland Township is first name, last name, address. Independence Township is name and address. Groveland Township, name and address. Holly Township, name and address. Commerce Township, name and address, with the caveat if persons are reluctant to provide an address, they are not required to give an address. Oxford Township, name and address. Orion Township, name and address, with the other caveat, if the person does not wish to give an address, they are not required to. However, if it's a public hearing, a name and address is required. Waterford Township, name and address. Bloomfield Township, name and address. West Bloomfield Township, name and address, with the caveat if the person is reluctant to provide an address, they are not required to give it. White Lake Township, name and address. Rose Township, name and address, with the caveat if the person refuses to provide the information, he can still speak. Royal Oak Township, name and address. If the person does not wish to provide the information, they are not required. Lyon Township, name and address. Some of the townships surveyed stated they had a sign-up sheet for those wishing to speak, which asked for name and address and also included a request for a phone number for the possibility of later contacts. Several townships stated that they do ask for name and address specifically for the record. This is sort of a follow-up. I know we were all on sort of an email chain that was with my recommendation and then township attorney providing his opinion. So you see township attorney's opinions are in blue, my rebuttal are in black. Township attorney, Mr. Marshall's requested motion, if passed, would violate the Open Meetings Act, MCL 15.263(4). It says a person cannot be required to register or provide an address as a condition of attendance at a public meeting. We are, in fact, not requiring a person to provide an address or register as a condition of attending the meeting. If, in fact, Mr. Comey was informed that I was advocating for individuals to either register or provide an address as a condition of attendance, he was either misinformed or misunderstood my position. Continuing, Mr. Comey, 15.263(5), Cooney, I'm sorry, states that a person, I know another attorney, Comey, states the person shall be permitted to address a meeting under rules established and recorded by the public body. We, as the Board of Trustees, are the governing body. Therefore, we can establish reasonable rules for addressing the board. The Open Meetings Act specifically states that although a person cannot be restricted from attending a meeting before speaking before the board, rises to a higher level, and therefore rules may be established by the governing body for that purpose. And I also have the, on the back page, the attachment of the law that I'm addressing. Mr. Coney, in 1977, the AG, Attorney General, opined that it was reasonable to require a person to identify himself if he wishes to address a meeting. In 1978, the AG said that under subsection 5 it was improper to require the person to have an actual interest in the subject matter as a condition to addressing the board. Again, looking at the above paragraph, it is reasonable for a person to identify himself. That's already been stated in order to address the meeting. However, rules governing the addressing body may be controlled by the governing body's established rules. We are not requiring that the individual has an interest in the topic to be discussed. Therefore, he does not have to have a home in the immediate area of Sleepy Hollow in order to address it. Mr. Coney, in typical Open Meetings Act interpretations, the AG's opinions lack specificity on what rules can or cannot be adopted. Based on Mr. Cooney's own assessment, the AG opinions lack specificity. If there's a lack of specificity, reasonable rules as allowed under 15.263 may be established. However, this is Mr. Coney again, however, it is apparent the presumption is that to establish a requirement for certain conditions for speaking during open comment is a violation of the Act. I see no apparent presumption in the opinion offered. Open Meetings Act states just the opposite. The board has the right to establish the rules, which the AG has clearly agreed with in the 1977 opinion. What the 1978 opinion limits is the requirement for the citizen to have an actual interest in the subject matter. We are not requiring that citizens have a vested interest in the topic to be discussed. We are requesting that the citizen identify themselves and provide a township, city, or village of residency. Mr. Cooney, in my opinion, asking where a person resides is not a violation if that is not a requirement of being allowed to speak. This is my comment. As presented in the above survey, asking for the information, if it is established in our rules set by the governing body, that being us, does not preclude us from allowing the individual to speak without providing the information requested. However, as Mr. Cooney clearly states, asking where a person resides is not a violation, if not a requirement, of being allowed to speak. We can certainly ask where a person resides. If they choose to provide the information, we can then assess their lack of transparency to judge for ourselves the validity of their position as it relates to their presentation. What? They choose not to provide.
You did say
Oh,
that.
okay.
Sorry.
If they choose not to provide the information, we can then assess their lack of transparency to judge for ourselves the validity of their position as it relates to their presentation. Mr. Coney, your policy manual requirement of name does not seem to violate the AG opinion. But as I indicated above, any requirement would be scrutinized if it results in litigation. My comment, any decision by this board makes it subject to scrutiny through litigation. The stated position of the Municipal Township Association, or Michigan Township Association, as emailed to us by Supervisor Thurman, a township board can ask, you cannot prevent a person from speaking during one public comment period required by the OMA if they don't provide it. So as you'll see from my amended motion, I'm asking that we require the person to be asked, but it's not requiring that they actually have to give us the information. And again, the last paragraph there is the Open Meetings Act applies. Now, it was really, I got this piece of paper when I picked up my package on Thursday, and it has 301 Sleepy Hollow comments. And it has 4 columns: date, name, address, and opinion. And so, because it had date, address, and opinion, my thought was that it was a survey, but a petition. So I asked, what's this a petition for? I mean, I don't understand. And then I was told, well, it's not a petition. The board asked for comments of the people that were here at the last meeting about 301 Sleepy Hollow. What I find really interesting, we asked for their address. But yet during a meeting for citizens' comments, we're not asking for addresses. So there's no harm in asking somebody their address. I want to know if somebody lives in this village, or this township, or this village, and is addressing the board. If they have an interest, I'm all ears. I want to listen. If they live outside the community, either they'll say, I live outside the community, in which case I say, okay, they have some other vested interest in this other than the interest of the community. Or they can say, I'm not going to address it at all, and then I'll say, okay, then I'm not really going to listen to you. I think we have every right to ask them for their address, and I think we should be required to ask them for their address. If they do not want to give it, we can't stop them from talking, but it will certainly, in my mind, question the validity of their position if they're not a resident of this community.
But especially though, the city / township, because some of the roads, even in Brandon Township, even me now, you give me your street address, I wouldn't know if it was Brandon Township.
I don't want the street address. That's what this motion said.
You
Wait
just,
a second. Are you all finished?
Yeah. Okay, sure, go ahead. I'm sorry, Scott.
I agree with Bob on this. I don't like the fact that not only is sometimes I feel there's been a concerted effort to mislead the board, but also to mislead the public, whether they're here in the audience or via the newspaper based on statistics of raised hands and counts and things. It's misleading. I don't see why anybody would have a problem giving us their city / township. And if they do, I assume that they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes for some reason or another. But if they don't want to, they can still speak.
Yes.
I have some more information if I can go next. My position is, I don't mind asking residents for their addresses. My position is that I don't want it to be required, and I don't want even us to have the appearance that we would be violating the Open Meetings Act by writing it that we are requiring it. But I sent your proposal to the township attorney because we've been going back and forth.
Right.
And so his response to your last proposal was, you have a proposal from a trustee that the board establish a requirement that a speaker during the citizens' comments be asked what city, village, or township they reside in. As we have discussed, any requirement placed on a speaker for exercising the right to address the board is subject to the Open Meetings Act. At least one Court of Appeals case has discussed this issue, and its conclusion is noted below. It does not appear on its face that the proposed motion places a requirement on the speaker. In that context, it may not violate the Open Meetings Act. However, if the information is used in a manner to make it apparent to speakers that their residence is relevant to the board's decision-making or will be considered in allowing the person to speak, then I think it is a violation. If you are going to make it a procedural rule that a person must be asked for their residence, then I think it should also be a requirement that there be an announcement that disclosure of residence is not a requirement. This does not mean that a board member cannot ask a speaker after they have spoken to disclose their residence. Such a question does not require a formal rule or meetings. And then he gets backup information.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've been to many of the school board meetings, and they have a sign-in sheet to speak. And could we do some, my issue is I do like to know where they reside. It might not always be based on my decision, because some people might have good information that reside outside of the township on something because they're an expert or something like that, let's say. But I like to know where someone's from. I sometimes worry about people giving their addresses because it's taped, people can find out where people live. So could we have a sign-in sheet where they sign in, put where they live, but if they don't want to put where they live, they're still not required and they can still speak. I understand we can't require them to, but on the sign-in sign-up sheet, you have a place, and then that way they don't have to state it there. What the school board does is they have a sign-up sheet, and when it's time for public comment, someone runs up, grabs the sign-up sheet, and then they start calling the individuals who want to speak. And then that can be provided for us to see where they lived. And then that way, then it doesn't have to be public knowledge. They still say their name when they get up there, but they don't have to give their address on.
I feel that way,
Wait,
that's,
Scott, let's listen to Terry and Keegan first. Terry? I'm just listening. Andy?
I have a concern that there could be somebody with elderly parents living in our community, and they're here to speak to us on their behalf, or handicapped people who can't come and speak for themselves. So somebody in the audience, I don't care where they live, if it's a concern to them, it's a concern to me. They're residents. And like you said, Dana, there could be some good ideas that come from another community. We've had people speak from Oxford about the trails, and so, as an example. So I just, years ago, you couldn't sit in a seat until you signed your name and your address, your full address. And that went away. I don't think it's necessary.
can I reply now?
Yes.
I've watched the school board meetings, it's very regimented when it comes, it's very controlling when it comes to having public comment. I think there's two problems with the way they do it. One, as people come up and comment, there might be somebody in the audience that didn't plan on commenting, that, but as a result of another comment, want to get up and speak. That's the first problem. The second problem with the sign-in sheet is the audience doesn't know if they're from the township, and maybe even the board, unless we all can see that sign-up sheet. I want to know if they're from the township or not. That's really all I care about. I don't care about their address. And if they're representing a parent or a relative or have some other reason for speaking, even though they don't live in the township, they can tell us that. I have no problem with that. But I would like to know if I'm being misled, and I feel that sometimes we've been misled.
Good.
I was gonna say, and I do agree the school board is sometimes strict, so I would allow, if they missed the sign up, or if they wanted to, then at the end, they come up, they don't have to be signed in, and if you're not signed in, you can't speak, because I do agree that gets too stringent. And I do agree that if they're speaking on the behalf of somebody else, because we have had that happen, I can't remember if it's here or if it was at the school board, where someone got up and spoke on behalf of somebody else who couldn't make it, it was here. So anyways, I like to know where they're from, how we want to do it. I mean, I'm up for ideas.
Yeah, it might make response. Okay, so, again, if they do not want to provide their place of residence, they don't have to. If somebody said, I'm here representing my parents, so I don't live here, but my parents do, I'll buy that as a legitimate explanation for why they're an outside resident coming here to address the board. I have no problem with that. What I'm asking is because if we do it any other way than requiring the board to ask, we're not requiring them to answer, we were required the board to ask. So that way it doesn't slip under the rug, it doesn't fall by the wayside, say, oh, what's your name? And leave it at that, because I can see that happening. So all I'm requiring, or asking for, is we require the board to ask for name and address. And if we want to amend it again further to say that we also announce that they do not have to give place of residence if they don't wish, I'm fine with that. Because again, if somebody's not willing to tell me where they live, and I'm not saying, I don't want a street address, that's the last thing I want. I don't want people to feel, safety concerns that I gave my street address. I just want to know if they live in the township. That's it. I think that's a legitimate reason to.
I want to know who's going to.
No. Go ahead.
No.
Okay.
You were like in the middle of a sentence. I don't want to interrupt you. Were you done?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay. I want to know who's going to double check this. I mean, they could say I live in Brandon Township and they live just over. I'm not going to say, hey, I know where you live. I mean, I don't know the point of this. It's going to lengthen our meetings, number one. I just feel I'm here to listen to anybody who wants to get up to that podium, no matter what. That's just me.
And I'll respond.
Wait.
I'm sorry.
Terry, did you have anything more? No? Or, wait, you didn't have anything the first time, so you can't have more.
She could have something new though.
All right, I'll speak my second time. I don't like the sign-up sheet idea. I think that's gonna be too much work to figure out. I mean, people are gonna leave early and then we're going, okay, this person, where are you? I just assume we ask these stand up if you're gonna speak. I don't have a problem asking for name and asking if they, what township, village, or city they live in, as long as we add the caveat that if they refuse to provide, that they don't have to provide that information, and make it a point that we're just asking. I don't have an issue.
So then maybe you've given before, like, when we have larger crowds, you've given like kind of the rules before citizens comments?
And I can do
And when there's only 2 people, you really don't give the rules.
Yes.
So,
I can be
you know,
more
maybe you'd be more consistent of giving the rules and it'd be in the rules then, and then they would know that.
Well, if we're gonna do that, I'd like to see a timer up here, because a 3-minute rule doesn't work for everybody. It depends on what's being said and who's saying it, if they get 3 minutes or if they get 6 minutes.
I think it's.
So, you know, if you want consistency,
Well,
nope.
No, I was saying more consistency, can I respond, sorry? I was thinking more consistency about giving the rules. I know sometimes when there's a few big crowds, Kathy's pretty good about sticking to the 3 minutes. When there's 2 or 3 people, we do give longer. Yeah, so I'm not too concerned about the time.
One last comment I want to make about the list that you got
Oh,
in
yes.
your box. That was for the people outside that couldn't even attend the meetings. They were locked outside
No, I-
because we couldn't fit them in the building.
No, no, I
So
got that. I
That's
just-
what that was for.
I just didn't know.
It wasn't them sitting here.
No, I just didn't know. I got it. There was no explanation. It was
And
just this.
I don't know who created it.
But my point was, the address is listed on here.
But she doesn't list it on the sign-in as you come to a meeting. So there we go again, it's not consistent. That's where I was falling.
And if my, one more thing, I can't remember which township it is, but they actually said they had an 8 timer. And they put an 8 timer.
That's the proper way to do it.
The only problem with the
No,
Yeah,
no.
It's
I-
proper.
It's fine, you're doing fine the way
With
it
the
is.
8 timer, if they
need a timer for that.
only use a minute, you still got time in there,
Um,
you turn it over.
Actually, the school board's actually gone over a projector now where they actually have an application that it's go and it starts warning you, it gives you flashing light
That
when
was
you're
because
down
of
to
the-
30 seconds.
but they only did that because
I
of the
think
bus,
you've been
and that
handling
was
it fine,
crazy.
Kathy, we
Yeah.
don't need to change that.
That was a little over.
So I would be willing
I
to.
like how they put it in other townships, that if the person is reluctant to provide, to give their address, they're not required to.
That's right.
Yeah. And that, and
As
just,
long as we include that, I'm okay.
and just so you know, that is exactly the way I phrased the question. I called up and I said, I want to talk to you, clerk, deputy clerk, I want to talk to you for 30 seconds. And I said, this is the question, so I read it to them exactly like it was written here, so there's consistency.
The other part is the required word, because, I mean, what if I forget?
Then we'll sanction you. I think we'll cut you a break.
How about if we just say citizens making comments during the citizens' comments section of public meetings or any other occasion where citizens address the township board will be asked that they provide their name, village, city, or township of residence.
Sure.
Or they will be asked but not required.
That's fine.
So, if they get up and speak and they say their name, do we know that they just forgot or that they don't want to? Do we say, you know, how do you?
I don't think we should interrogate them. That's my opinion.
Well, and here's my thought on it though, because we've seen it here before with public comments, is the first couple of people get up and say, oh, my name is so-and-so and I live in such and such place. And then the second person will do it, then the third person won't, and then the fourth person won't because they're the person before them, so.
That's where I was kind of saying, can we remind them somehow? Because if you're not gonna do the rules at the beginning, then how do they know?
And that's what, originally why I had the required in there.
Right.
The required is so.
Well, we can remind them, and
Okay.
according to the township attorney, he said it wouldn't be improper if we asked them.
Okay.
But I think when we do ask them, we have to state that you don't have to say it.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Are we gonna go for the amended motion? Or,
How did you rewrite it?
so citizens making comments, I started at that. Citizens making comments during the citizen comments section of public meetings and/or any other occasion where citizens address the township board.
Will provide.
Will be asked, but not required, to provide. But not required.
On to, I think, what we should have done, I think what this told us now is we should have actually included the verbiage that we're gonna use on the night at the time of the meeting, you know, exactly what you're gonna say, because it's still gonna be a gray area.
Well,
depending on how you
what I
ask it.
can do is I can type something up and send
Okay,
it.
that sounds
or,
fair.
See if everybody's good with it.
Yep.
Does that sound good?
Yep.
Are we gonna take a vote on this?
Yes. Is there any other discussion?
That might be the first.
Okay, I have a motion by trustee Marshall and a seconded by trustee Broughton to, the motion is citizens making comments during the citizen comments section of public meetings and or any other occasion where citizens address the township board will be asked but not required to provide their name and village, city, or township of residence. Yes? Okay, roll call, please.
DePalma?
Yes.
Cordova is absent with notice. Marshall?
Yes.
Allen?
No.
Broughton?
Yes.
Darnell?
Yes.
Thurman?
Yes. Motion carries. All right, now we are on item C, authorization for sale of skate park equipment. As presented by the director.
Okay, it's been a couple of years that I've been getting a few hit and misses on emails and conferences, things like that, trying to sell the skate park and or try to make a program work for us that's suitable for the village and the township as well. The last village, or the last department head meeting, we was told by the village manager, Bill, that that topic of the skate park came up again. And that Bill said that we can disassemble it and send you a bill, and it's a bill, you know, form of payment. And I said, no thanks, I'll disassemble it and take it from there. Candy Allen called me in her office later that day, and she said, won't you do this? So I did. And only reason I'm not, we do have a buyer. It was a firm handshake. August is the tentative date to move it. But he said, go ahead and let the Polk Township Board know who the person is. But he wanted to keep it quiet until he got some blessings from some other people. So that's why the name's not mentioned in the report. So anyways, our park subcommittee talked about what kind of, you know, we didn't have a buyer at this time. We talked about what kind of pricing that we should do. And we mentioned just get rid of it, free, 10,000, 5,000. So I do got a $5,000 offer. And we also talked about, because it's in a later agenda item, that 5,000 could also be used to purchase my next item, a mower. wants
I'd
to
like
vote
make
for
a
it.
motion to allow the Parks and Recreation Director to sell the skate park equipment for $5,000.
Support it.
Any discussion or questions for the Parks and Rec Director?
Is it,
No, go ahead.
is it a firm $5,000? He comes back and says 3,000, you gonna
No,
go?
it's agreed on 5,000.
Okay.
How
No
much-
paperwork's been done, but it was a pretty good firm handshake, and I know the person personally for 25 plus years, so.
How much did we pay for it?
The concrete was a $12,000 investment. It was done in 3 phases. The head pipe was 28,000, some of the other stuff was
28,000 or 2,800?
28,000.
Okay.
Basically, the equipment was near $100,000.
Okay.
There's also $6,000 of replacement boards and storage.
It's also been for sale for.
Yes, so
Well,
Fred,
have
maybe-
we really, oh, hold on.
And maybe he
I have a
can,
couple more questions.
yeah, expound on.
Can I finish? Okay, so have we done an RFP to try to sell it though? Because I know you've gone back and forth saying about selling it, but I don't know if it's been officially for sale, advertised for sale.
Yes, I have.
In what? I haven't seen it, I'm just curious.
Well,
How it's been
it's-
advertised for sale. Because typically, if we're selling something worth that much money, don't we need to do, like when we've done fire trucks or any of that type of stuff, haven't we had to do, or trucks or something, haven't we had to do something where we're trying to get rid of that bigger piece of equipment?
I advertised it on Michigan Parks and Recreation. They don't put it on, because our membership only allows announcements. Our membership doesn't allow their newspaper that goes out monthly. And that's one thing we discussed prior to the offer that we got, that I was gonna update or upgrade our membership so we can put it in their newspaper. And that reaches all the rec departments in the state of Michigan.
But it doesn't reach places like that run, obviously there's, like a place over by Oak and Yard that has an indoor place, there's some outdoor places. There could be other places interested, and I just thought there was more of a process than just agreeing to $5,000 when you're talking something that was that big. We asked that before we just agreed to sell it, so Kathy, I'm asking, is there like a RFP process
Well,
or something to selling something like that?
Well, we have, what is it, a Gatsby list of property that we own over a certain amount. I don't know if that's on it or not, but I do know that it's fully depreciated.
Yeah.
Well, that can be fully depreciated, because if you took section 139 and depreciated it quickly, like right when you first buy it, so just because it's fully depreciated doesn't mean that, I mean, it's still a huge amount of money just to sell for $5,000. What would it cost for us just to?
I got an
move it to the-
estimate on what the cost to package it up and move it was $25,000.
Right, but we have a whole park we have a park we're working on, we still have another place that
I
we
was
can put it.
already told we're not moving it out to the park.
By
was
who?
told
I
that.
have never been asked that question if I want to sell it or move it. I mean, that's a lot of money to sell for $5,000.
And then I've had an offer by, not an offer, but inquiry from an engineer from Milford. They backed out, they had a grant and they were looking to buy equipment, they backed out. They had an inquiry by Flint Township, they backed out. Inquiry by Davison Baptist Church, they backed out. And I had another inquiry from down by Alton Hills, I'm not sure what the company was, but, you know, I keep getting these people asking about it.
But
I sent pictures.
who said we weren't moving it? Because that was never determined by the board. We never voted on not moving it. We
It
never
was
voted
it
to
was
sell
a
it.
discussion, maybe it was a park subcommittee, I don't know, it was a discussion.
I never had such a
Problem
discussion.
is though, we pack it up, we move it to where? Where is it gonna sit?
I
For
think
how
the
long?
assumption was you couldn't get people to use it even here in town. How are you gonna get more people to use it once it's moved farther away?
Well, I think once it's in a park, people would go to it. They go to the park to
In a
do
park.
things. It isn't a park, but it's not at a park that you go to that park to do different things at. It's in the middle of the village, and I think the reason the village isn't happy about it is because of the residents. I think if you take it to a park, that's a different story. It's in then a park that's being used for playground, it's being used for different things.
Well, this
We also-
discussion's been going on for a couple of years.
Yeah,
Nobody's ever told me.
I haven't heard any discussion of it being moved out of the park. I don't want to put him on the spot, but I'd also be interested to get Lieutenant Glover's opinion of putting that type of.
There you go, big guy.
You know how hard it is to monitor here in town. How much harder is it going to be for you to monitor it out there?
Maybe it was a department head meeting we talked about, we did mention that.
Moving it out there, you have to take someone to it. I don't think you'll have as much riffraff out
That,
there.
that skate park has been a topic of discussion since I've been out here. And, I mean, like Fred said, to move it out there is gonna cost them a fortune, plus you're gonna have to pour more concrete, so you're gonna have more money invested in it. You can't, how are you gonna police it out there at that park? There's no way. Our calls out there, when it was active and there were enough kids for it, was a daily event. And not only for injuries, for anything from disorderly persons to neighbors complaining. So I mean, that park that skate park has been an issue for quite some time.
But isn't that because the kids can get to it? Where if it's at a park, it'd be parents taking their kids to it.
I mean, I'm giving my opinion, and most of our townships where there have been skaters, there usually is some problems that come with it. Skateboards are normally a fad, and at one time, and I think Fred can vouch for it, you'd see kids all over Independence Township out here skating all over the place. I haven't seen kids skating around here on a skateboard, and I can't remember when. So, and I can tell you that, you know, that park is at the other opposite end of the township from us, and if something happens out there, we'll get there when we get there, and who's gonna police it out there? I mean, it is gonna be an issue.
It's just a lot of money, $5,000 for $100,000 fund that we spent. So then back to my question is there something else we can do to look at selling it for more than $5,000? I thought when we sold like trucks or other stuff like that, we did an RFP. It's not an RFP because that's for our side, but I thought there was another thing that we had to do.
We auctioned, we sent it to Tristan Harris, who has he did it online.
I guess part of the problem is, I wish that we could just go ahead and move forward with this. I guess we can still vote on it. But the fact of the matter is, we should have brought it to the board before now. We knew that we were trying to sell this last year. We should have gotten approval to sell it last year. And maybe this is, I think it's probably partly the Parks and Rec subcommittee's fault.
Yeah, the approval was to look into it, which I did. I can't spend all my time doing that, but.
Yes.
Can I?
Sure.
All right, I have a couple of questions, and I have an opinion, because I'm never shy of sharing my opinions. So, let's talk apples and apples, not apples and oranges. Okay, so the total project you said was $100,000. That included all the concrete, right?
No. It's about a $115,000 project.
Including all the concrete?
Yes.
Okay, so just.
Fencing, excavating.
Okay, all that stuff. So just the equipment that you're selling for $5,000, what would your guesstimate be that actually cost, without all the other stuff rolled in?
Right around 80 grand.
Okay, so we're still taking a substantial hit.
Yeah.
But we're talking apples and apples, because if we move the park out there, we're gonna have to lay in more concrete, and,
Yeah, concrete is excavated.
yeah. You have replacement boards?
Yeah.
Is that going with the sale? Okay. And now my opinion that I'm never shy of sharing, I personally think skate parks are just a dirt magnet. Speaking as a police officer, we've had nothing but trouble at skate parks.
I disagree with that, but.
Well, I'm seeing it from a different angle, I guess. They grind on the corners, they grind on rails for stairways. It just is not the kind of, it's not the kind of clientele, I'll let that for over. It's not the kind of clientele I would want to take my kids to be a part of, with all the swearing and cussing and carrying on. So, that's my personal opinion.
And that's good. You know, just a little brief history, real quick. You have your football, baseball, you know, your team sports, and there's those kids that have individual sports. Back in the day, we had a bunch of kids come in here, and they said we have nowhere. Skateboard was trendy, it was popular, so we built them a skate park. Then, like you said, the bad apples came in, and they wrecked. It was a skate at your own risk. We had the insurance for it. We didn't require helmets, pads, nothing. Skate at your own risk. And then we got the bad apples in there, people sneaking in there at night, hiding, smoking weed, all that crap. And then we got the court monitor. That tended to work out pretty good. For a while, the village took it over. They got fed up with it. I tried to run a program last year. We had sponsors. That kind of program would have been good because we limited the age for 15 and under. We had 2 court monitors and they were teaching the kids, but it's too costly. So it has a history of good, bad, and ugly. So I suggest we just get rid of it and let this new guy that wants to pick up the pieces and go with it.
Sounds good to me.
Can I speak? I haven't spoken once yet.
Are you allowed?
What's your address? I think you categorized everybody into one group, calling everyone a dirt magnet. When my sons were younger, they used to enjoy skateboarding, and I don't consider them dirt. I think that skateboarding is something that a lot of kids enjoy, and a lot of kids still enjoy. Yes, the skate park being unregulated did draw some users that weren't the best for the surrounding area and community, but it did also serve as a good thing for the community. But I think as in response to Dana's comments about the value, I agree with what Bob said. I think skateboarding has kind of, and what Lieutenant Glover said, is kind of seen its interest. And I think at this point, we are seeing a lot of problems out there, and we need to do something. The village would like to see us do something, and I think that we finally got an offer, and I'm in favor of accepting it.
I just want to respond to, since I still have kids in elementary school and in middle school, I agree that skate parks can bring not so desirable situations, but so can anywhere. So can a playground, and so can a football game. You can have issues at a football game or at a basketball game or at a baseball game. So I don't want anybody to think that we're categorizing, because I know people who drive to go do BMX. I know people use the scooters at the township, or they go out to a place in Waterford, like I said, to do skateboard and scooters. And I have sons and other kids who I know, so that's where I think it would get used. But I mean, and yes, 5 to 80 is different than 5 to 100, whatever, 20. But I just wanted to say I don't want to categorize everybody who uses them, because I still know people who do too, and I don't think that's right.
And just so you know that even though we did do a handshake, I did say it has to be board approved. So we're not stuck with this.
Okay.
One more question.
Yes,
And this
sure.
sort of relates, in a way, kind of, sort of. The village has been after us to move this piece of equipment. And we have this beautiful pavement in the parking lot. And isn't that portion of the parking lot over there actually the village? Did the village pay for that, or did we pay for that?
They're contributing.
They are contributing. Enough to pay for it?
For their part, the part that's on
Okay,
their.
all right.
Yes, yes.
Just wanted to keep everything on the up and up.
I kind of look
I
at it
thought
as,
you wanted the skate park.
No.
I was getting at that too.
I look at this as a $30,000 win, because we're not paying $25,000 to have it all moved, packaged up.
Yeah.
And the person is going to move all of it and clean it out, so
No cost.
that's what I see it as.
So for the people on the board that don't know, the last village meeting, they were to the point where if in the next week or so, they didn't get a response from us, they were gonna send the DPW out there, pack it up and send us a bill for the moving of it. So this has been ongoing for a long time. I'm sorry if some people on the board didn't know about that, but this has been on sale for a year now. And I'm happy to, especially since it's gonna stay maybe locally, I I reaffirm my motion. I don't know if anybody seconded it, but.
I'll second it.
I do.
No.
Clerk Allen second.
Okay.
I have a question. Is the village gonna require us to do anything else once the equipment's gone? Are we gonna be responsible for getting the fences out of there or the cement, or who's all gonna be responsible for
From
making
what
that
I
any
understand,
type of a
the
certain
village,
land?
they have their own recreation committee or somebody that, that I go through sometimes to ask permission to use, the village for, events or whatnot, that they're coming up with some ideas of what they want in there.
So they're not gonna require us to do anything else to that land?
Nope.
We are the ones that did the cement and the fencing and all that?
Fence and, I mean, they talking about, one of the ideas was like ice skating rink, you know, the plastic, and whatever you put in there is gonna be noisy, so baseball is noisy, but, you know, and I understand, the neighbors, it could be, you know, Terry lives right next door, and, you know, it's noisy. It's noisy, so. We had sound deadening, we did everything that we possibly could do to make it the best we could. It just didn't work out. It's been since 2005, we did it 3 years, so it's got its,
This
it's
is,
got
not,
its.
you did fine.
Yeah.
This, for some reason, this got going bad proportion.
Well, I guess the subcommittee could have told us what was going on. I haven't been part of the subcommittee, so I didn't know that was going on anymore.
In a minute.
Okay, any other discussion? Alrighty, so we have a motion by trustee Bratton and a second by clerk Allen to allow the Parks and Recreation Director to sell the skate park equipment for $5,000. And we'll do a roll call, please.
Cordella is absent with notice. Marshall?
Yes.
Allen?
Yes.
Broughton?
Yes.
Sternal?
Yes.
DePalma?
Yes.
Thurman?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. So next, we have another proposal from the Parks and Recreation Director, and that is to purchase an Exmark mower.
Okay, last year, we took over the tree library mowing, and we did save money. And this year, we are, working our butts off. May was a record-breaking year for heat and rain, 3 inches more. What happens, grass grows quickly, fast, and you're mowing more often. I'll admit, I think we bought a lemon for a mower last year. I replaced the motor in it already, I replaced the pulley, and replaced some belts twice. The belt is $100. And we don't overdo it with this. It's 10 years old. It's in fine working condition right now with the repairs. We had a spot there where the grass was getting tall and the mower wasn't working. And my site director said, very good, you just mow, and I agreed. You know, it was 4 or 5 inches tall on the soccer field. The tree library is around 8 inches. It takes 15 hours to complete the job that we're doing, and then for the money that we budgeted, we're getting 1 to 2 extra mowings on the soccer field, which is what we need. But last year, we had even though the soccer field, the 7 acres that are there, was being mowed twice a month, we had to step in with that used mower and mow it in between because it was just growing too fast certain times of the year. So I'm panicking, where am I gonna get a mower? And I went to borrow stuff, I couldn't get it. So I said, what the heck, a lot of these companies do demos. Go down to Weingart's, I talked to a sales rep, he goes, you come here at the right time. He goes, I'll do a demo for you, don't put over 10 hours on it. He says, but take it to your board, that we're running this special government pricing. You see, you got $11,000 plus more, 60 inch, which this one's a 48 inch. And 0 financing, 5-year warranty. The good thing about it is I could pay for it through fundraising that we have, our current baseball or Memorial Day tournament will handle the payment on it. And we demoed it. We saved 5 hours. So 15 hours reduced down to 5 or 10 hours. And it's got all the safety features. Our current mower has 0 safety features on it. So we replaced a lot of parts in that one, but it works. I can send this one back. But next year, we're doing 19 acres now. We are saving money from contracting it out. I paid $12 an hour instead of $60 an hour. And next year, when the baseball fields are ready to go, we got another 20 acres to mow. So we're gonna be up near 35, 39 acres to mow. And that's counting the Hadley Road area. So it's a good time to buy this. Maybe it'll be offered next year as well. I called John Deere, got a price on theirs, it's for same order, basically the same features, $14,000, 0 financing, but no government discount. I see it's a good opportunity, and taxpayers aren't going to pay for it, even though it is a park piece of equipment. You know, John's the only operator. He does a great job. I watched him mow, and it was like day, like night, this mower, the way they handle things. So it's up to you guys. I'll make it happen if you give the approval.
All right, who has questions?
How much was it? My guess was the extra foot on the mower deck, this will take you less time also?
Yeah, we reduced it by 5 hours.
Oh, all right, I'm sorry, I was reading, I probably do 2 things at once. How much?
I did take it to the park subcommittee, and I had a 2-to-1 vote to move forward to the board.
Did you want to make a motion?
Yep. I'd like to make the motion to purchase an X-Mark mower for $8,479 from Weingart, with payments $206 per month starting June 2018, and to move $1,442 from expenditure line, park improvements, to line item equipment.
Would someone like to second that motion?
I will.
All right, any other discussion?
I did, but I was waiting, go ahead, if Terry does and anyone else does.
Is it in the budget? Did you know?
That's the amendments right there.
So you didn't have it in this year's budget? You
But I
like
did
a
not,
truck trying to-
I did not say we're buying a new mower. This opportunity came up, so I made a budget amendment that's in front of you.
Well, because I called them and didn't let them know who I was, and they offered me the same thing for $9,000 instead of $8,000.
Yeah, well, just to be,
Just like
the 101
Wouldn't be
budget
11.
does amendments all the time to make adjustments, so I did the same thing.
Okay. Okay, so have you looked at the cost of the mower, our gas, the cost of now an employee to do 10 hours instead of 15, but then add on, now they're gonna have another 19 acres next year? Did you compare all that to having someone cut the grass now? I mean, have.
Service?
Yeah, have a service?
Yeah, when I suggested that we take over the mowing, absolutely, I did a whole document for the board last year.
Right, but now adding on a new cost of a mower, the additional gas, and the additional time once you get the additional 19 acres.
Well, that's gonna be next year's budget.
So is it still cheaper to buy the mower
Oh,
than
absolutely.
than to go with the
You're
service?
saving
Even
on
paying-
labor.
Even paying somebody to do it?
Yes, because if you think about it, $12 an hour or $13 an hour, what do you think contractors get for their labor? Because they gotta pay liability on, they gotta pay medical, they gotta, and then they're.
Right, but on top of our 12, we have FICA, and we have liability on them. I'm just trying to figure out, because it's not just, it's a 15 hours, that's 2 days they're spending cutting our grass. And then if you add another 19 acres, they're gonna spend 4 days a week. Someone's gonna spend 4 days a week cutting our lawn.
Absolutely, it's still gonna be way less inexpensive. Because you're paying, for instance, we paid $12,000 for mowing in the past, 12 grand. We're only gonna be paying 7 for my estimates for this year. Now, yes, we're gonna,
And
if we get a
that's
new
for the
mower.
employee.
Huh?
7 for the employee?
And the fuel. all
And the
everything.
fuel, because last year you said you didn't budget enough for fuel, so did you budget enough for fuel this year?
Yes.
Okay, and you're not cutting, it is an employee, correct?
No, and I'll just tell the board right now, if my employee gets sick, guess what? I will cut the grass because it's not gonna get long. But that's because I'm in charge of the park and recreation. Right now, John cuts the grass. We have a young kid that we just hired, also cuts the grass. With a rider mower, he does the ditch line. The rider mower is a $350 value. We're gonna sell that, we won't need it. But I'm not gonna say, or the board can say, no, Fred, okay, I'll contract it out, but, you know, the park's not gonna go, you know, unmaintained.
No, I agree, it needs to be.
I've worked out there at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, many times.
I agree, it needs to be maintained. I'm the one that always said it should not even be Parks and Recs that pays to maintain it. It should be the general fund, because even if recreation went away, we still have. So I just want to make sure that all the costs are included, because now you're looking at spending $8,500 on a mower, the additional cost in gas, and that someone's cutting, you know.
There's no additional cost in gas, because we're not increasing the volume of acreage. We have that already
Well, you
in my
didn't have it
fuel.
budgeted last year, but you have it budgeted this year then?
Yeah, I have the
Okay.
fuel budgeted this year.
I wasn't sure if it got budgeted this year or if
Yeah.
it's done the same. But then next year, we're increasing the cost of fuel, so I just wanted to make sure the cost was.
Yeah, and this mower, this is like Bob Robert was saying, that it's a 60-inch. It actually travels 10 miles an hour. This thing, when he's doing the soccer field, it was a beautiful cut, it was straight, it was level. And then we got the sliding hill, we got that steep hill. What I did, because I did not want John up on that steep hill until I tested it out, I wasn't going to put my employee at risk, so I tried it with that old mower. It's slow. And for me, I stayed the brakes, going down to the brakes don't work that well. So, you know, it's an old mower, it's 10 years old. This is a 5-year warranty. Anything goes bad with that motor, training, anything like that, it's covered. It's 0% interest. It's better, instead of paying it full outright, to just finance it and we keep our money in our bank. And I got fundraisers that take care of it.
How safe will it be out there if we've already had vandalism out there? How safe will it be?
We changed the locks on the shed. I knew that was going to be asked, and I forgot to bring the information, but the lock we have is much better. Now, it's a tin shed, anybody can take an electric saw and go through it. But it's pretty, that new lock we got, there's no way people can get in there with a key and pry it open like they did the old garage door type lock that was on that shed. It's tucked in there.
I recognize that
Was that cheap?
Now we're awake.
So anyways, the shed has a new locking mechanism on. It's actually bolted from inside and outside. It has a cover that goes over with a key and a padlock. So, I mean, they really want to get in there bad. Negate the park lots up at nighttime. We did have an incident in pure daylight out there that somebody, on a rainy day when the soccer was canceled, went in there and pried it open. But they're really gonna have to work at it if they do this. And in the future, I would hope that the township decides to, you know, once we get these baseball, basketball, and sessions, that we have some kind of pole barn out there.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? All right, I have a motion by Clerk Allen, and it is seconded by Trustee Marshall. to
You're up
purchase
next,
an
big
X
fella.
Smart mower for
Should only take about an hour.
$8,479 Line Darts with payments of $206 per month starting June 2018, and to remove $1,400 for expenditure line 508-604 97629 and park improvements to line item 508 97700 equipment. Okay, everyone seems to be quiet, so we'll do a roll call please.
Marshall?
Yes.
Allen?
Yes.
Broughton?
No.
Durno?
No.
DePalma?
Yes.
Thurman? I'm sorry, Cordella is absent with notice. Thurman?
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
I would like to take this opportunity to commend the fire chief on his outstanding taste in music.
Is that one of yours?
Might be.
All right, on that note, we'll have.
Oh. Bump, bump, bump.
Fire chief come up and talk about the safer grant.
My kids are so much better at operating technology than I am. Good song, by the way. So what I'm here to talk about first tonight is we are in a unique opportunity to apply for a safer grant. A safer grant is staffing for adequate fire and emergency resources. It's a federal grant. It's a matching grant. The grant match is the first 2 years. The feds cover 75%. We cover 25%. Third year, the feds cover 35%. We cover 65%. And then after that, we have to decide if, what we want to do. The reason I say we're a unique opportunity is we are struggling with our pay call staff. We have excellent pay call staff, but we're just running a lot of calls. And we're running more now than over the years. So let me give you an example of how many more. I've talked about this on multiple occasions. But when I started the department in 1987, we ran 314 calls for the year. Last year we ran 1,323 calls. All right. We have increased personnel over those years. The last time we increased personnel, we ran 800 calls a year, just over. So we're still about 600 calls more than what we were running back then. So with that being said, what I'm asking for tonight is just a resolution from the board saying that you understand the requirements of a safer grant. You understand that there's costs, there's expenses with it. You also understand that if we're awarded a grant, that it has to come back before this board, the fire authority, and the village council for final approval of any acceptance of grant money. With that being said, I have been able to show that we can keep that staff. So at the end of our 3-year agreement with the feds, should we get awarded the grant, will anybody think that we've got the grant? We don't yet. But we're waiting to see how, so far we've made it through the process. But what they're looking for is the feds want a letter from the board saying that yes, you are in support at this point. You're in theory of, yes, we need additional resources, and yes, we're willing to cover that. But there's still a process that has to be submitted. The other unique opportunity is that I can show in our budget, in our operating, at the end of that 3 years, so actually onto the 4th year and 5th year, that we can keep the staffing and we don't have to raise that millage rate for operating, which is huge. We then can also cover our station number 3, 24/7. Right now, the people in that area that live in our northeast corner of our township are being serviced by Station 1 or Station 2, and there's a drive, no matter how you look at it. The average response time out there for those are above the 6-minute response time that we'd like to have. So that will help with that. The other is that it will also help with getting trucks on the road immediately if we have a fire. So it's going to help in our ISO rating. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. So there's a lot of advantages to it, and yes, it is a cost. And yes, there will be further costs as we go along. But I've been able to show that in the 5-year period, we will not have to raise a millage rate on operating.
so on the operating mill. So I just want to make sure that we cover that. So again, this is just a resolution saying you support us, submitting all the following up on all the paperwork, if you will, and that ultimately the decision still has to come through the process, and that is the fire authority, the township and village.
I was just gonna say, I'll make that resolution without having to read this whole thing. And then I just wanted to add also, because you said you'd be able to have 4 duty people, so you can run 2 medics at a time, so that's also another benefit of it.
Right. Well, what it will do is it'll allow us to run 2 calls simultaneously.
Right, that's what I
Yeah,
said at a time.
yeah.
So that's a
Yeah.
huge benefit there too.
Yep, absolutely, because we're seeing more and more of that. When I first came on the department, we'd get a back-to-back call occasionally. And when I mean occasionally, I mean like, once every quarter. Now we're getting the back-to-back ones on a regular basis. And we're even getting to the point that sometimes we're getting 3 and 4 calls all at the same time. And we have to rely on mutual aid partners. And sometimes we just don't have the staffing at that point.
Okay, I have a motion by trustee DePalma and it is second by trustee Brockman to adopt a resolution of the Township Board of the Charter Township of Brandon authorizing the supervisor to sign a letter of support for the staffing for adequate fire and emergency response SAFER grant request for 3 full-time firefighters. Is that your motion?
Yes. Sorry, I thought I had to read all the whereas.
If you want to, you can.
No. But yes, that top portion is my motion.
Okay. Any further discussion on this? Roll call, please.
Allen? Yes. Broughton?
Yes.
Breno?
Yes.
DePalma?
Yes.
Cordova is absent with notice. Marshall?
Yes.
Thurman?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. We can move on to our fireworks permit. And also, Courtney has let me know that she's going to represent the DDA for this proposal.
So what you have before you, and I'll speak before Courtney, and then she can expand on it from there. The township where the fireworks are being shot off at is in the township proper. The township, by state law, is the only one that can approve a permit for a pyrotechnics display. That's why you have this in front of you. All right, and that's why we have to do it every year.
I'll make that motion to approve
Second.
for the fireworks permit.
Sorry, Courtney, you don't have to say.
Yeah, really.
I had my fingers crossed anyway.
I'm good.
Didn't make me get the big thumbs up.
I was just ready for support.
Did you support?
I second,
And maybe you could touch base on the liability insurance.
Yeah, there was some questions on liability insurance, and we've gone through that whole process to the point that we've added a property and casualty statement, and Kathy has that. I don't know if did you forward that out to anybody else, or?
No.
Okay.
I
But the township is listed as secondary, not primary. That was one of the concerns with our insurance company. And also that the permit actually had Charter Township of Brandon listed instead of just Brandon Township. So.
Okay. And I just want to say there's July 7th, if anybody was wondering.
Thank you. With the
It was
rain
in the
date.
paper over the weekend,
Well, yes,
but the actual publications and things like that should start next week.
And please make sure you donate.
Yes, please.
And what I'm saying is to the public that's out there, you see the boxes, and not to the township board, I know the township board's already done that, but we're still trying to raise funds for the fireworks. They've done awesome so far, which is really, really cool, and I'm really happy for. So it's a $12,000 show. It's amazing.
Last year, how much did we spend?
10?
10?
It was around 10. By the time we added, because I think the fireworks show was $9,000, and then we had to pay for the toilets and stuff like that, so it's more than that.
It was 11, I think we spent 11,500 last year after
Oh,
toilets and advertising and everything, so I think that puts it at a $10,000 show.
Yeah, so we're probably at,
We're at 11 and a half right now. I think our last total was, and we need to be around 13 and a half to hit that mark without upgrading anymore.
They didn't forget to bill us that bad, no? Little John's?
no. No comment.
Okay, I have a motion by trustee DePalma and a seconded by trustee Broughton to approve the 2018 permit for fireworks other than consumer or low impact. That is presented. Okay, any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Broughton?
Yes.
Darno?
Yes.
DePalma?
Yes.
Cordella is absent with notice. Marshall?
Yes.
Allen?
Yes.
Thurman?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Chief.
Great, thank you.
All right, next we have the 2017 server replacement. So I've been talking to our IT partner, which is IT Right, for the last year and a half at least, about replacing our servers. They gave me an estimate of around $8,000 to get it done, so I budgeted that much. It's actually gonna, the quote that they gave us is actually for $4,177, which is good, so I'm sure everybody read this over, so that's about all I have to say, yes.
Did you get a quote anywhere else?
Because there are
IT people.
Well, I got a quote for laptops for elections from IT Right, and it was 3 times what I actually got them from Dell.
Well, a lot of this is installation, and IT Right knows our system.
Yeah, my opinion is this cost is actually low for a server, so I don't think I've seen other costs they've billed us sometimes that were high. This one's fair for a server.
But typically, we get 3 bids on anything over
Yeah,
$2,500.
like Kathy said, I don't think it's realistic to get bids from when you're installing a server that needs support from a company that's been supporting us in the past. It's a fair bid. And I have no skin in the game, it's fair.
My only question is if they did before quote 8 as a rough estimate, and now they're quoting
That was
4.
for 2.
Oh, that was for 2?
We currently have 2 servers, and they're recommending that we just have 1 server.
Okay, because that's what I was trying to figure out what that. So the details of this make sense now. It's not like they're giving us a cheaper product or something like that. Okay. And why do we need 2 instead of 1? Okay. One's good, so we have 2 and one's okay.
They said one more do the job.
Okay.
Save us money.
Gotcha. Okay, that was my only question.
Any other questions? Would someone like to make a motion to approve the server replacement quote from IT Right for $4,177?
I'll make that.
I'll support it.
Okay, I have a motion by Treasurer Darnell, and it is seconded by Trustee DePalma to approve the server replacement quote from IT Right for $4,177. Last time we had our servers replaced, it was done by whoever we were contracting at the time for IT services, or the last 2 times. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Darno?
Yes.
DePalma?
Yes.
Cordella is absent with notice. Marshall?
Yes.
Allen?
Yes.
Broughton?
Yes.
Thurman?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Next is our MTA dues
I'll make
request.
a motion to remit $5,787.57 to Michigan Township Association for the 2018 dues and pay the expenditure out of professional services.
Would someone like to second? Marshall? Any discussion? This time, I'm suggesting that we include the legal fund fee, the legal defense fee.
We have legal defense always.
because
Just curious why.
because they also help townships in general with legal defending. And with their amicus briefs that they submit periodically. I don't know, if the board doesn't want to pay that, we can amend it. Just wanted to point that out.
I do have a comment. I feel like red-haired stepchild here. My email address isn't included. It's like you divorced me.
Yeah, I think this is supposed to be.
You're gonna be sorry, Bob.
You're not the only one. You're not alone.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, there's lots.
Oh, I
of
see.
people.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have to update.
We have to update it. If it's, yeah.
Any other questions or discussion?
I don't care about the legal defense, so it doesn't, they don't want to pay it, I can amend my motion. I'm open.
How does everybody else feel about the legal defense?
I don't feel we need it.
Here's-
And we haven't had it in the past. We don't need it then.
I don't want it.
Huh? Doesn't matter.
So, yeah, 6-1, half dozen the other.
Okay. So $5,619.
Amend my motion.
And are you okay with that amending?
Yes.
So I have a motion by trustee DePalma, and it is seconded by trustee Marshall to remit $5,619 to Michigan Townships Association for 2018 dues and to pay this expenditure out of professional services. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
DePalma.
Yes.
Cordella is absent with notice. Marshall.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Broughton.
Yes.
Darnall.
Yes.
Dermott.
Yes, motion carries unanimously. And now we will be going to the public,
No.
we did that one,
Equipment
disposal of senior center. Presented by the clerk.
As you see, I included the policy verbiage, so it's up to this board to decide how to dispose of the old printer copier that no longer works.
I suggest we just take it to something green, that's all I can think of, is if it's not working.
Is there anything in
But
the
I think it
copier
needs to
that,
be scrubbed first.
yeah, is there anything that has to be toxic or anything like that that we have to worry about?
I don't know.
That's what something green takes care of.
Do they?
Well, we wouldn't include toner or ink in it, I would think that would be.
The senior center has 2 volunteers that take care of all the computers there, and when we take an old computer from here, they scrub it, so we'll have it scrubbed by them as well. But, I don't know how it's gonna get from the center to something green.
What do you mean by scrub, is that where?
Remove all of our data,
That's what I
anything
was
from this
gonna,
company.
okay, that's what I was gonna ask, if there was any data that could have been stored in it.
Yeah, and that will all be cleaned off, so if the wrong person got it out of the junkyard, we'd be safe.
Okay. I thought it was just.
Something green is gonna dismantle it anyways.
Right, then tear it down. Any suggestions?
Any other suggestions on what to do with it?
I think we should pay, our ordinance officer perhaps to take it over. Our coordinator's not gonna move it.
Well, you're gonna need.
Oh, because it's big.
Yes, it's very large, it's a,
We might be able to use the trailer from the rec department and maybe
last one that got moved, my husband tore the ligaments off his bone, so he's not volunteering. I just think we need to hire the right person to do it, to make sure the liability as well.
Agree?
I don't, yeah, we can ask them. But I don't, we have to use the trailer.
Well, if this is a suggested motion to let the Edna Burton Senior Coordinator dispose of it, can she just?
Find who she wants.
Yeah, find who
Up
she
in the
wants.
policy though, it states that it is our duty to,
Well, why did you make the motion?
So do you want to amend your motion?
no, I wanted you to read what our policy says and go by it, period. I shouldn't have to put it in a motion. It says that we have to approve how it's disposed of. So that is the whole package.
I say we dispose of it by taking it to something green and we work the details out. On our own.
I'll make the motion to allow this Edna Burton Senior Coordinator to dispose of the Conica 7035 copier. Do you want me to add on?
To something green?
Yep. To something.
Support.
Okay, any other discussion on this? I have a motion by Clerk Allen and it is seconded by Trustee Marshall to allow the Edna Burton Senior Center Coordinator to dispose of the Conica 7035 copier to something green. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. And now we have the trustee timesheets.
Tell me what's on this.
Sure.
Okay. So if I can explain this, what happened was originally Supervisor sent out an email asking if we were available either the 29th or 30th for a special meeting. So I put down at the time, I was available for either day, it didn't matter. I then got an email from Sue asking if we could expedite submitting our timesheets. So I submitted my timesheet with the idea being their meeting, special meeting would be the 29th. Well, I didn't find out until afterwards that the special meeting was going to be, after I'd already made other arrangements for the 29th, so I couldn't make it. I couldn't make the meeting on the 29th. So this was submitted prior to actually the meeting date being set, because I was trying to expedite it, make it easier for Sue. So that's why there's a difference, so. And however we want to handle it's fine with me. I mean, we had talked about just deducting it off here, or possibly just leaving it on here and deducting it off next meeting, whichever's easier, doesn't matter to me.
Well, no, when I expedited mine too, like she asked, and then she emailed me, and she said, what about the special meeting? I said, I don't know if I can make it. If I make it, can I adjust mine? So then I adjusted it when I made it. But my point wasn't even yours, because I didn't even realize that. My point was is these three added to the 792, and then they adjusted this, which is now 891, so the 792 was incorrect. So I don't want to approve something that's not the correct amount, but if we have to correct it anyways, why wouldn't we just take Bob's off? Because why should we pay for somebody for something they
That's
haven't
fine.
attended?
That's what we're doing.
And
We're
even
going
adjusting
to-
it the next month.
So it is 792.
Two is correct.
Because one trustee got it in a little bit late, but in time for your board packet.
So they're amended timesheets, but the amount is still
Same,
790.
correct.
Yep.
Would someone like to make a motion to approve the trustees' timesheets in the amount of $792?
I'll make that motion.
Who would like to second? All right, I have a motion by trustee DePalma and a seconded by trustee Marshall to approve the trustee timesheets in the amount of $792 as amended. Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Marshall?
Yes.
Allen?
Yes.
Broughton?
Yes.
Breno?
Yes.
De Palma?
Yes.
Cordella is absent with no discrimination.
Yes, motion carries unanimously. That concludes our new business. At this time, we will take citizens' comments, 3 minutes per citizen. And please state your name, and we ask that you state what city, village, or township you live in, but it's not required. Before we ask citizens from the audience to come up, I would like to read into the minutes a letter that was submitted from a resident named Alan Losi, and he is a resident of Ortonville. It has come to my attention that one of the topics in the next Brandon Township Board meeting will be the condition of the roads. Because I will be out of town for business, I would like to express my concerns via email and would appreciate it if this message could be read in the meeting for others to hear. I have lived in Ortonville for 26 years and in my current residence, 1348 Granger, since 2010. My wife and I are now seriously considering relocating out of the area, with the main reason being the poor condition of the dirt road. The perpetual cloud of dust that hovers in the area with moderate traffic on the road not only covers our house inside and out, it makes it difficult to breathe while sitting on our deck, but presents a clear danger to anyone who may be walking or driving on the road. A major concern we have is that someone might get hurt or even killed because of such extreme dust on our section of Granger Road. When driving west behind another vehicle as the sun is setting is the best time to witness the situation. I've come across a minor car accident in front of my house because of this. Even more concerning, I've come across a family walking on the road while I was driving home from work and saw them at the very last moment through the cloud of dust. At this point, it was clear how dangerous it is to be walking on this road. There are a few walkers, including my wife, who walk the roads for exercise every day. My wife has started to drive elsewhere to walk because of the thick dust in the air. I am not sure what materials are used or what can be done to improve the situation, but I do know it is possible to correct the situation because the dirt roads in Goodrich and Davison are not anywhere near as bad as ours. These communities seem to be able to provide a nice near blacktop road condition for their residents with absolutely no dust. Horton Road west of M15 is a good example. Why is it we cannot do the same in our community? I urge you to take this seriously and provide a solution that will keep the dust to a minimum level. Okay, I wonder if that was over 3 minutes.
I watched the clock, it was 2 minutes.
Good job. All right, if there's anyone else that would like to speak tonight, now is your opportunity. I saw somebody. Yes, sir.
You heard them? Yeah, I heard my voice down there all night.
My name is Dave Burley, live on Sleepy Hollow with my wife Megan, who requested that I be nice. I don't know whether that was a slam or not, but it's in regards to 301 Sleepy Hollow. Starting out, my notes are kind of out of order here, but I'm having a hard time getting by the fact that there is rules for him moving in and moving a group home in. We know the sex offenders are out, but my biggest concern is now you don't know who's in it. Because I'm pretty sure if you're a murderer or whatever the case may be, you don't fill out a piece of paper like you do when you're a sex offender. There is no registry for that I know of. I could be wrong, but I haven't found one. So even though they're out, we don't know who's in now. And this guy is obviously displayed blatant disregard for the safety of others, kids, adults alike, by moving those people in across the street from Jake's 3 little girls for one. Our other neighbor's got 2 younger boys. that was just a smack in the face to the township and everybody, because we had a meeting with him, all of us, the week before. And he specifically said he had 173 residents in his homes, and 2 of them were trouble of that sort. And I looked right at him and I said, and so did Mike, and I said, you know what we're gonna ask you? Where are the 2? The obvious question, right? He said, it will appear there'll be nothing like that here. There'll be 18 to 30-year-old autistic people. Nobody had an issue with that. We were all fine with it. I mean, you stated what happened earlier. I haven't. I was off the other day. I seen 4 police cars at that house that I've seen the entire 19 years I've been living here on my street. It's just one thing after another with this guy. One other thing I had was the Lara complaint that was written. We're writing more, but I would request that you put a little teeth on the next one, because the one I saw, I'm supposed to be nice here, so the one I saw was very light. How's that? It was very light-hearted. I mean, if I worked for Lara and I read that, I would have went, they don't seem to care. I was pissed. It would have meant nothing to me, because I read a copy of it. I just don't understand why there's rules for us. I mean, I jumped through hoops to build my deck. You know, you gotta jump over this bar and that bar and that bar, and I did it all, and I got the permits for it, and I got everything for it, and I got the sign-offs. And this guy just comes in, pulls the bar down, and smacks you in the head with it and rocks right by you. I mean, it's okay. I don't understand that. I mean, it's called an adult foster care, but we all know that's not what it is. That's a sugar-coated name for it's a glorified jail cell. It needs to go. He's got 6 months temporary license. I think we need to bust this guy down. He's shown blatant disregard multiple times. I mean, he pulled a gun on 2 police officers with his kids in the car. What is that? Kids look at me, I'm the man, I got a gun, I'm gonna pull on this guy that's not looking. And it's gonna take him 10 minutes to convince me he's a police officer. But somehow he managed to get off on that too. I mean, there's just a trail behind this guy. And you know what's gonna happen. If that 6 months goes by and he gets that license, it's gonna be hard to get him out. And he's gonna turn around, he's gonna move people like that right back in, just to smack you in the face. He's already done it multiple times, so. Like I said, I'd request that the next Lara letter have some teeth in it, so it isn't so lighthearted. Thanks for listening.
Yes, would anyone else like to speak?
I'm Lisa Pagano-Lawrence. I live at 326 Sleepy Hollow. I live across the street from 301. First thing I want to say is the discussion about asking people where they live before they speak. I can appreciate that whole discussion. I believe that I don't have a problem with asking people. I think we should be asking people. But at that last meeting, there were 50 people at least standing outside, locked outside. And there were non-residents in here speaking while residents were locked out. That is not appropriate. And I think that if you're gonna, I think you should ask where people live, if they live in the township or not. If they don't live in the township, they should wait until township residents who pay taxes here can actually speak. Those people, they have outside interests. I appreciate that sometimes people with outside interests have something to offer, something of value, but they shouldn't be able to speak before residents while residents are locked out of an open meeting. That is not appropriate. My other comment is, I understand Kathy said that the ordinances that the Brandon Township Board might pass cannot supersede the state law. It's my understanding the state and the federal law say that adult foster care facilities are not intended to house individuals released from a correctional institution. That's what happened in this case. That is not right. Those people were released and immediately moved into this home with zero security. And I am having trouble understanding how it's okay for them to break that law. And there is nothing that the township can do. The township is supposed to be here, part of the reason is to protect us from this kind of stuff. We pay taxes, and we don't feel like we're being protected. That, that people can be put in directly out of a correctional institution, and the only reason, as Dave said, the only reason we know is because they were sex offenders and had to be registered. Now we have no idea. We can be on that sex offender registry every day checking. We have no idea who's getting in there, if it's someone convicted of robbery or assault or any other violent crime. We have no idea if it wasn't a sex offense. That does not seem appropriate. Also, it is my understanding that Lara has finally notified the township about what was going on in this group home. I don't believe the township has notified anyone, any resident.
I haven't gotten anything from Lara about.
Yes, we did. We got Candy sent the notice.
Oh, that there is a
That there's
group
a group home there, yes, that's
But
what
that's
we.
all we did.
That's all
It
we
came the
did.
day of our last meeting.
Shouldn't that have been made public?
It came that day.
And what happens in the future? Because this guy found Brandon Township to be easy pickings for putting his criminals in. And if you think that he's not gonna do it again, you would be sadly mistaken. Because it was easy. He came in under the radar, he put these sex offenders in next to little kids. Nobody did anything. And if we had not been vigilant in checking on that, they would still be there. And they would be watching over all of our kids. So, I'd like to know what's gonna be done in the future to prevent this kind of stuff again. Also, we were told that the township board was gonna meet with the residents of Sleepy Hollow, and that has not happened, and it's been a month. And we would like to know what the deal is with that. Because I understand at these meetings, we can make our comments for 3 minutes, but then there's not really an open dialogue. We would like to have that. That's really, really not appropriate. Thank you.
Everybody knows me, Lieutenant Glover, I'm a township resident as well. I wanted to speak on Sleepy Hollow. I had direct conversations with the Michigan Department of Corrections. You know, I get a list every month of the current parolees that live in the township. And I set them up with our detective or one of my officers to go out and do spot checks on those parolees. We never received a letter about any parolees being moved into that group home. Matter of fact, we didn't even know it was a group home or a foster home. The conversations that I had with Heather Zimmerman from MDOC was that those two had some type of a handicap, which I could argue most sex offenders have, and that they were put into that house temporarily. Since then, I've had no conversations with Heather Zimmerman other than the night that they were actually removed from that home and sent to other locations. But like some of the residents have spoke of, if that guy makes his, I'll call it his probation, his 6 months in that house, we're never gonna get rid of them. They're gonna be there like part of the woodwork. Whatever the township board is doing as far as with the state rep and whatnot, has to stay full speed, foot on the gas pedal. Because when he makes that 6 months, he's gonna move whoever he wants in there, and we're not gonna have any control over whatsoever. There is the Second Amendment and the Fourth Amendment. We cannot just go in and search or enter that home to find out. They can deny us entry unless we have exigent circumstances. So once that 6 months comes up, unless there's an exigent circumstance for us to enter that home, we can't just walk into their house. They have the right to protection search and seizure.
What's the start date?
Which one's that?
Yeah.
October is
October.
a 6-month deadline.
Okay.
And we've already lost a month.
I mean, we have, as you guys well know, I mean, we have a lot of group homes in this township as it is. But we don't have any halfway houses, and that's basically what that is, a halfway house, is, at least with the 2 people that they put there. And, I mean, it's something that, I've seen it in city settings, but I've never seen it in a rural setting like this, on a private road, in a neighborhood. And I just think that this is something that we cannot sit back and keep putting this off from week to week, because by the time anything gets done in Lansing, it'll be too late. And then I also want to make a comment too, reference what we were talking about with the skate park with Fred. I too, not every kid is a football player, baseball player, basketball player, and there does need to be a place for some of those kids that are not into those type of athletics. Unfortunately for the skate parks, from a law enforcement perspective, and I'm not saying that every kid up at that skate park has been in trouble, because they haven't, but the injuries that come with that and some of the other mischief that has come with that is an issue, no doubt. My recommendation, I made that to Fred tonight, I'm a baseball guy, is that they put a batting cage or something on that place. They have all these ball fields, but no place for those kids to go in and actually take swings. It would be a lot safer as far as for the spectators and things, without baseballs flying all over for warm-ups. Just a recommendation, the concrete's already there. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make comments?
Margaret Green, Saddle Lane. My neighbors and I are, I think, frustrated because we feel that we have waited a long time. We would like some action. We spent a lot of money. My neighbors have spent a lot of time meeting with lawyers, doing research to try to figure out how to fix this. And we're appealing to you to help us with this, because we feel like we've been doing this all by ourselves. Here's my sign that was stolen, and it wasn't just one incident. There were multiple signs in our neighborhood. On my property, and my neighbor across in Saddle Lane, we each had a sign on the corner. Those were taken immediately. The sign on the side of my yard, I pulled out of my driveway to go to work, and that third shift was leaving, and I saw a sign go flying across the yard. Tried to chase that car, but we don't have speed limits on our gravel roads that are so dangerous, which I flipped into my yard in the front. And the car got away, couldn't get a license plate. So then put the sign back up. I leave to go to work on May 18th, and it looks like somebody drove right over my sign, and as it turns out, yes, somebody drove on my lawn over that sign. And so we made the police report. Then on Sunday, have all the grandkids at our house, and the white van that services the residents at the home, the white van that goes in and out at large, very high speeds, rates of speed, pulled up. The sign was not even usable, so we had it in our weeds. Pulled up in the van, got out of the van, went to my property in the bushes, grabbed the sign that was damaged by one of their cars running it over, took it, turned around and drove back up to the house. So we had sexual offenders living in that house. Now we have criminals working there. So we've switched. So this Burnett man, I mean, I don't say this kind of thing in public, but he is scum, and he is going to do more damage to our community than anything. And we've allowed him in. And again, my neighbors are working overtime to try to make things. We've waited out 3 hours of really long stuff tonight because we want your help. We don't want to have to sit and come here and just talk to you like this. I know one of the families, they don't want to stay anymore. The kids are ready to move out. They will not stay across from that house. And that's heartbreaking. And you've heard all those heartbreaking things. We're just saying help us. And listen to all the paperwork, all the research that everyone has done, and help us get to people that we need to get to. And don't let this man get through October. Thank you.
Anyone else like
Evans, Brandon Township, and on that note, you were talking about people saying their township. If you remember back when we were at the auditorium up at the high school, the people that weren't from Brandon Township, how they'd get up there and they'd kind of stammer whenever they'd go to say where they were from. You could tell right away they weren't from our township. It was easy, okay? You could tell that they just didn't like to say it, okay? These people here, when they start moving out, this assessor, you don't need them anymore. Because property value is going to plummet, okay? Your houses, they're not going to be worth anything. And now I'm going to say something good. This lawnmower that Fred wants to buy, it's well worth it. I've got one. It's going to cut his time down. It's a pretty nice lawnmower. The other thing I want to say, Kathy, you have to say more on the trail. What's new on the trail? Have you been going to the meetings? Nothing new? I mean, you were going regular. What happened? Nothing? You haven't heard nothing new? Is it going in Clarkston or up Dixie or by the scum buckets over here on Sleepy Hollow? I'm just wondering.
I'll answer it during my report.
I'm just wondering, and I got a solution for the debt we owe on the outside toilet. We could put slot machines on the doors to get the money back.
Yes, sir. You stayed a long time.
I certainly have. And so my name is Tim Crane. I'm a Brandon resident. And I know, as a couple of the others have said, you know, if I have a legitimate concern, one way or the other, I shouldn't have a problem identifying myself and letting you know who I am. And if I'm representing my parents, that's okay. Maybe everybody has a chance to speak, but you're in a position that you're supposed to be taking care of the township and the residents. So the sleepers and the other people that come in to try to persuade you, they really shouldn't count. It should be us folks that count. And they touched on the white van. So sitting on Granger Hill, I am pretty well aware of all the ones that speak. This guy right over here says he's helping me. I don't know. You know, I know we're working against the law. We're working against state police.
You better watch it.
I know, you're pulling me over, right?
No, but I can tell you that I have sat there numerous times as well as my guys.
Yep.
And I cannot camp there.
Great, do you want to come over
I
here?
will, I will. We have had this conversation many a times.
Yes, yes we have.
And I have sat there personally myself numerous times during the morning hours with basically an unmarked car working radar with traffic coming down that hill as well as going up. I've done it at as soon as school gets out, trying to catch the kids coming up Granger from the school, which they do. Unfortunately, I have a radar unit that does not put out a beam. I can turn it on as soon as I see the car. It defeats radar detectors. And I'm not disputing the fact that he says there's speeders on that road, because I know there are. We've had accidents from the kids hitting the washboard effect. I've sat there a lot of times. I can't get a car over 35 miles an hour.
Where is this? I'm sorry.
In Granger Hill.
Yeah,
Yeah,
going
between
up.
Hadley and East Glass, just going down the hill or up the hill, whichever.
We have speed issues on all of our back roads. Unfortunately, 6 days out of the week, I have 2 cars on the road in this township, and I cannot dedicate a car most of the time to just sit in certain spots out there. And we run 7,000 calls a year. I can't just dedicate a car there. We do when we can. Unfortunately, that's just not the only location in this township. But, it is an issue for me, no question.
Well, in response to that, I'm certainly aware that it's not the only location in the township. But what I also am aware of is that whether the people are going 35 or 45, if it's unsafe for the condition, and I've got videotape of the vehicles coming down and going up that are vibrating across the washboard, and unfortunately, regardless of what the radar says, that's not having your vehicle under control, and that becomes an issue. That's a careless and reckless driving. And those careless and reckless driving tickets, when the officers are out on the road, then should be written. So, you know, we can talk about a speed limit, we can talk about radar, we can talk about whatever. The problem is that there's been accidents out there, and all they got to do is watch and see, and then they got to start doing what they're supposed to do, and then it'll slow it down. We got the white van that's transporting them back and forth now, that's flying up and down. Nobody seems to care about that, and nobody seems to do. So when something does happen, then there'll be problems and there'll be issues. So I've talked to him, I've talked to every other cop out here for 23 years, and it's the same issue. So you got a bunch of people that collected data, sold it off to the state police sold it off to a bunch of people in Lansing, and a bunch of people in Lansing decided that they know better than what's going on out here on the roads. And they have, in all fairness to you, they've handicapped them. We can't get signs up. But even whether the speed limit, we can debate all day long if the speed limit's 55 or 45. When the signs were 25, they were going 40. Now there's no signs, and they're doing 60 and 70 over top there. Friday, they chlorided the road. Coming from Hadley, from east going west, I heard a car accelerate, and by the time that I jumped out of bed and got to the window to try to see who it was, the car was halfway down the road. I listened to hear if they were going to crash into the stones down by East Glass or run into a tree. Now, I am well aware that you only have a couple cops at night and the two have to go out at the same, a lot of times at the same place, right? I get all that. I've heard all the laws, I've heard all the rules, I've heard all the excuses. The bottom line is when is something going to happen to change this, okay? Just because it is doesn't make it right. We keep talking about the same stuff over and over and over and over. Their hands are tied and nothing gets done. So when one of my daughters that I've taught, that are 3 and 6 that I've raised out here, you pull to the end of the driveway, you roll down the window, no matter if it's raining, snowing, blowing, or what, you look up the hill and you listen. And you look down and you look up and you sit there for 2 or 3 minutes before you pull out. Now, how long does it take and what's the odds before somebody gets hurt? And there's going to be problems if it's my daughters. Because one of these assholes, excuse my French, are tearing up and down the road because nobody wants to do anything about it, or can't do anything about it, or hands are tied.
I gotta disagree with you to a point, if you don't mind. Because
Tim, are you finished? You have 10 seconds. Are you finished?
Yeah, I'm finished.
Would you like to sit down, please?
I gotta, first of all, my hands are not tied. And when it comes to speeders out here, none of my guys' hands are tied. You have to witness it to enforce it. And there is a law as far as that you have to maintain control of your vehicle. Yes, but you have to be able to also testify in front of a judge that that person is driving so recklessly that he can't maintain control of his vehicle. I can tell you from as much as we sat there, and it has been, and I've done it myself numerous times, it just isn't there. I'm not saying that there's not speeders. I mean, we have a plethora of dirt roads out here, and it doesn't matter whether it's dirt roads or paved roads, we have speed issues. If it's posted 35, they're going to do 45 or 50. If it's posted 55, they're going to do 60, 65. But I cannot camp somebody directly in front of your house like you'd like 24 hours a day. It's impossible. I don't have the manpower to, and I can't do that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment this evening that hasn't had a chance to speak? Anyone else that would like to make a comment that has not had a chance to speak yet? Would anyone, Tim, would you like to make another comment?
No, it's, yes, I would. Yes, I would. You know. So never once did I ask you to camp out there. I've asked you to come and park in my driveway for me.
Alright.
You don't,
Tim is to address the.
you don't have a problem. Well, but I'm trying to answer his rebuttal. Right, so I feel that I have to look at him because that's polite, right? What, come here.
Talk after the meeting.
Come here.
We can go back to it all day.
I know, well, we probably will, okay? But we have problems, you have problems with speeding, and you can set up a speed trap over at Biggie's. You have time to set out on 15 and control all that. But, I'm gonna use the term generally, then we say, well, I don't have manpower to do this, but we got manpower to do all this other. And last month, when we were talking about this outside during the meeting, we turned around and said that, yeah, we write a lot of tickets out there. Well, that's great. Well, maybe start writing tickets.
Okay.
You know what,
I'm there.
Tim, it looks like you would like to speak to the lieutenant, so why don't you speak to him out in the back?
Okay.
And you can have that conversation. Thank you. All right.
I'm gonna take, first of all, I'm not gonna debate this anymore, period, whether it's in here or out there. I can tell you what I can do and how we do things.
And I think you already told
He's not gonna tell me how to do my job.
Not trying to tell you how to do
All
your
right,
job.
did someone else want to make a comment or not?
I got one more on Sleepy Hollow,
Okay.
just so you know.
You
My wife-
guys stand up.
Yep.
My wife and I took a walk the other day, and we went down Meadow Lake Lane. Just something that's being created by this situation. And somebody came out, hey, who are you? Why are you on the street? So, just so you know, that's what's starting to go on now. So you're building walls, not bridges.
Thank you.
My name is Mike Lawrence. I live at 326 Sleepy Hollow. And it is occurring to me, and it has already, but a few testimonies here, the white van, speeding all over the place, neighbors questioning neighbors that wouldn't have before. What this man is a cancer in our community, and if he's allowed to stay, it's going to grow. If neighbors of mine move out and sell their homes, who's going to move in knowing that there's a halfway house across the street? I've poured my heart and soul out into my house the last 20 years. I don't want to sell it. I don't want to give it away, but I'll do what I have to do. I won't live near this type of person the way that we did for the 2 weeks that the sex offenders were there. It was too stressful. And it's a cancer in the community. And if he's allowed to be there long term, the consequences, you guys are going to suffer for a long time, probably for forever.
All right, thank you. Okay. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, we will now do board comments. Scott.
Sure. For the road subcommittee, I'd like to schedule something in the next 2 weeks, just a brief meeting with the people that we met with out on Granger Road, because that was 5/6 weeks ago now. And they kind of led us to believe that they were going to be doing the, they were doing the Kent Road, the grade. They were talking about doing that. And they acted like they were going to be doing that soon. Well, we're 5 to 6 weeks in, and I haven't seen a hint of them. And that has to get done before they do the ditching on Granger. So I'd like to be able to follow up with them to see where this is going instead of waiting all summer to let that go. Secondly, there was something mentioned earlier in our meeting about, I guess there's been some issues with how this board has been speaking to each other. I personally feel I've watched a number of other boards over the years, especially early on, and I watched other iterations of this board before I came on board. I think we are doing very well. I think we're all very cordial with each other, and I don't want to see anything change. Some good, healthy debates, a good thing, and I think that we all have been respectful of each other, and I don't see the need to change anything. I'm done.
Thank you, Dana.
I just wanted to speak on this Sleepy Hollow. I have been in contact with Riley's office on a weekly basis. I have talked to I've talked to at least 2 of the residents on Sleepy Hollow and tried to provide any information that I've heard over time. The one thing that I wanted to ask Kathy is when you do schedule that meeting for hopefully within the next 2 weeks in June, or within the end of June, whatever it is in June, that you wanted to have with Lara and with the Department of Corrections, if you could please try to see if Riley and Robertson's office or them wanted to be there, and then also even maybe, I know Mike Stevie hasn't been involved too much, but even if he's interested in finding out what's going on. I know that it's been mentioned that we cannot supersede state law, but what I'd like to do, if we could, once we hear back from the Attorney General, as that one act states that the Act 110 of 2006, Section 2 says that group homes cannot have, residential group homes cannot have parolees in them. And if we can write an ordinance to agree with the state, which I wanted to talk to Glover about, but yeah, our ordinance says that already in it too? Because I don't recall that being in our ordinance. Okay, so our ordinance agrees with that. So shouldn't we be able to do?
With the state law.
Pardon me?
With the state law, which that is part of.
Correct. So is that actually handwritten in our ordinances though, where you can read it, or do you have to go back to the state law?
You have to go back to the state law.
But couldn't we write in our ordinance so it's clear as day as us, so they don't have to go back to the state law? And then our officers, because there's been times that you wanted us to pass stuff that the officers say, oh, it's easier if you have it in your manual, like Bill has said before, it's easier if it's in your manual because then I can proceed on it easier. So I wanted to see if that is state law, why can't our ordinances be written to agree to state law to make it easier for Bill or for the sheriff's department to do whatever they need to do to enforce that there are no parolees in residential group homes. And also, I know you're questioning who is there, but right now the Department of Corrections has told us that there are no parolees there. And if, hopefully if Glover continues to receive who parolees are, he would see that they are not there. I think that's the only news that I have for you guys right now to share. But
Nobody believes in
All
that,
right.
okay?
Yeah, first off, thank you for showing up. I encourage you, it's a tendency among people to look at something and say, oh, that's probably not what I'm really seeing, or making excuses for things. I encourage you, anytime something like that's been happening, report it to the Oakland County Sheriff's Department and let me know, and I'll keep track of it too, just like I did first time I spoke here. I'll keep track of this stuff. If you want to help get his license so it's not a permanent license, we can show that he's a public nuisance and that house is a public nuisance. And we can do that by outlining and being specific, not just saying, well, they're speeding. Be specific. Dates, times, estimated speeds, if you can figure that out. Although that might be a touchy one. But keep specifics. And then we can present all of that to the licensing review and say, this place is nothing but a headache for the residents, and they're systematically harassing the residents by running over your signs, by stealing your signs, by doing the kind of stuff that, speeding up and down the roads. So be specific on it and write down everything and report everything to the Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department has what's called CLEMS, and I'm not sure what the acronym stands for. But every time that you call with a complaint, it gets put in the computer. So all they have to do is go to that address, 301 Sleepy Hollow, and they'll say, oh, look at all the calls we've had. That's what Lieutenant Glover did when I asked him how many calls have been there in the last 3 months. 7 calls. He just went to the computer. It's really easy, but you have to report it. And don't just say, ah, shit, they ran over my sign again. Report it. And the other thing is, and Lieutenant Glover's not here, and the other gentleman's not here, Tim's not here. I understand Lieutenant Glover's position. He has limited manpower, and with limited manpower, you have to prioritize your calls. So I have every faith in the Sheriff's Department, every faith in Lieutenant Glover. He's doing an excellent job. So although we all have concerns about the back roads, because I drive on those roads all the time, they're doing a good job. Wow.
All right, thank you. Terry?
Oh, nothing.
I just want to say when the notice came through the mail the day of our meeting last month, it doesn't say, can we bring it? It is just a notice saying you now have a home in your community. It gives the address, that's all. That's all we get. I file it and that's it. I just send it down to the attorney in case it was gonna be helpful. But, you know, it didn't state what was happening, unfortunately.
One of the things that I'm trying to do is we've compiled a list of all the group homes in the township. And Lieutenant Glover, when he gets those notifications of the criminals that have come into the township, we're trying to develop a system where we can cross-reference and make sure that they're not in group homes. We don't have that totally ironed out yet because he has been off on medical leave. So when he gets back, that's one of my plans is to get with him and so that it will get flagged and we'll know if we get one of those in the group homes. But what is very disconcerting to me from what Lieutenant Glover just said, it doesn't sound like he's getting notified of all of the ones that are coming in. So we need to follow up with that, and wherever he's getting that information from, we've got to contact them and find out, hey, why aren't we getting all the names? Because we didn't get those two parolees.
I think he said maybe because they had the disability.
Well,
and then
we need
HIPAA law. That would be the issue of HIPAA.
To follow up on that.
I don't agree with that. I'm just stating what I think he said.
There's been no news about trails. I haven't heard anything, so there's nothing to report. I haven't been to any trail meeting. I haven't seen any notification of any trail meeting. I wanted to say something about the speed study. I know that the road commission is now notifying the state police once our roads are graded and chlorided, and then they've got 14 days to come out and do a speed study. So they were notified the first time that the roads were done. The state police did not come out. So the road commission will be notifying them every time, and it's up to the state police to come out so they can do the speed study, and then we can determine what the speed limit could be on certain roads, and I believe Granger Hill is one of them. I know Kent is, I believe the Granger Hill is too. And then I have another road that I got a complaint on, Viola, which is like a subdivision street. And people are coming off M15 and speeding down Viola, so.
When traffic's backed up.
And we need to add that to our speed study.
Isn't that the road, is it the road that goes behind the liquor store and then cuts out onto glass?
Such a short cut through.
Yeah.
Also, I don't seem to be getting all the complaints that you're getting, and I don't know if they're being shared on Facebook or some other means, but I think if the residents are sending complaints, it would be helpful if they send it to the whole board, or if you're getting some by another means, that you could share them with the whole board. That would be helpful. And that's all the comments I have tonight. So if someone would like to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.